My adopted son called me Mom at Thanksgiving, and my father lost it. He told me I didn't deserve that title because I never gave birth. It was one of those Sunday dinners that pretended to be warm and fuzzy, like a Hallmark movie on mute, while the underlying soundtrack was judgment, pressure, and that silent parental condemnation that cuts worse than anything screaming ever could. The dining room table was arranged the same as it had been when I was a child. Mom's roast chicken, Dad's mashed potatoes with excessive butter. My grandmother insisted on giving me a horrible crocheted table runner for Christmas when I was 16, and it strangely never went. My sister Phoebe was already glowing before she said anything, sitting there in a soft lilac sweater that looked like she'd just stepped out of a pregnant photo shoot, her fingers nervously twitching toward the waistband of her pants, as if her barely there baby bulge needed protection from words. Life itself. Then she said it, her voice trembling and her husband Nate squeezing her hand beneath the table. She informed them that they were expecting. Just like that. There was no build-up, drama, or dessert course, only 3 words that exploded across the room like an emotional explosion. We're having a baby. My mother screamed, literally screamed, and then burst into tears in the way that women do when their entire soul decides to pour forth. My father stood up, walked up to Phoebe, and gave her one of those rare reverent hugs that made you wonder if he was ever softer, more human. Then came the line. The one that knocked the wind out of me and still sounds like a poor echo in an empty room. My father stepped away from the hug, turned to Mom and said, "Now this. This is what real success looks like." He didn't say anything intentionally to harm me, I believe. He spoke it like a man proclaiming a touchdown at a football game, or like a proud coach on the sidelines celebrating his team's victory. But the instant he uttered that, I felt my chest sink in, like if something ancient within me had been crushed forever. I still grinned. I smiled because I'm an expert at pretending. I grinned because I've spent time in antiseptic doctors' offices, covered in paper gowns that shred too easily while some stranger with a clipboard tells you your eggs are exhausted, your uterus is difficult, or your body simply doesn't cooperate as it should. I grinned since the last time I broke down in front of them. My mother handed me herbal tea and advised me to calm down. Maybe it's all in your head. I smiled because I needed to. Because what else would I do? Toss my plate across the room? Shout about hormone shots, operations and miscarriages that they had no idea about? Tell them I was once 12 weeks pregnant and lost it in a goddamn Walgreens toilet stall while no one answered the phone? I smiled. I watched as they celebrated her. And I clinked my wine glass to theirs. And I told Phoebe how delighted I was for her. I actually meant it in some ways. She did not ask to be the golden kid. She did not construct the pedestal that they placed her on. Hell, maybe she just wanted to get off it and be viewed as a normal person. However, the fire continued to burn. That did not deter the truth. I was 38 years old, infertile, and considered a failure by my parents. Do you know what hurts the most? They knew. They knew what I had gone through. They'd sat in the hospital waiting room after my ectopic pregnancy nearly killed me. When I returned home from my 3rd failed round of IVF, they had brought over casseroles and I couldn't stop crying long enough to eat. They had seen me spend 5 years of savings on a fantasy that would not come true. They knew everything. Phoebe was pregnant, therefore none of that mattered. Phoebe, who had stated that she didn't want children until she was at least 40. Phoebe, who became pregnant 6 months after her wedding without trying. Phoebe's life appeared to unfold on cue, like a well-rehearsed stage play. After dinner, I lingered behind to assist clean up while they swarmed around Phoebe in the living room, caressing her stomach as if it were a magic lantern. I scrubbed dishes in silence, letting the water run for too long, pretending to be busy so I wouldn't have to sit and listen to them choose baby names as if they were planning investment portfolios. When I finally got into my car that night, the cold hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. I turned on the ignition, peered straight ahead into the dark driveway, and whispered to myself something I hadn't said in months. They believe I will never be a mother. I squeezed the driving wheel till my knuckles became white. They were wrong. My pupils narrowed, and I felt a tiny spark ignite someplace deep within me. Low, nasty, and fearsome. Dead wrong. When you quit fighting the same damn struggle over and over, you get a sense of silence. A silence that does not bring calm or relief, but rather a lingering ache, as if your body remembers the conflict even after it has ended. After the final unsuccessful IVF effort, I did not yell, cry, or damage anything. I simply sat on the edge of my bed, staring at a solitary crimson dot on the sheet, and I knew it was over. Not because physicians say so. Not because I could not afford another round. But something inside me, something I hadn't realized still had a voice, finally whispered, "Enough." For months following, I moved like a ghost through my own life, going to work, answering texts, and pretending to laugh at baby showers, all while my insides felt hollowed out like a cursed pumpkin on Halloween. I removed all fertility apps from my phone. I packaged up the baby onesies I'd bought on impulse. Someone had handed me a little crocheted hat just in case. I kept the sonogram photo buried at the back of my nightstand. Then I flung the box into the attic, closed the door, and convinced myself I was finished. However, just because you finish something doesn't imply you're no longer feeling it. The grief persisted in unusual ways. I did cry at dog food commercials and avoid the diaper section at the grocery store like it was radioactive. And then one day, at 3 a.m., I found myself going through my phone and reading about volunteer opportunities in the city. I'm not sure what I was looking for. Perhaps a distraction. Perhaps a motivation to get out of bed. Perhaps a life raft. What I discovered was a juvenile mentoring program at a neighboring shelter. They dubbed it Haven House, and it wasn't particularly fancy. The paint was chipped, the lighting in the corridor flickered, and the couches in the recreation area appeared to have seen better days. But there was warmth in that place. A raw, tired warmth that did not require much more than regularity and care. So I signed up. The first several weeks the youngsters had no idea what to do with me. I did not blame them. I was simply another adult who showed up smiling and definitely wouldn't stay long. But I continued to show there, week after week. I played board games, read books, assisted with math homework, and tried not to cry in the parking lot afterwards. By the age of 8, some of those children had witnessed more darkness than most people do in their whole lives. They didn't need me to change anything. They simply needed someone who did not go. And this is how I met Jamal. He was 10 years old when I first noticed him, constantly sitting in the corner of the recreation room with his hoodie drawn up and a notebook in his lap. He didn't say much, but his eyes followed everything. And when he did talk, it was usually crisp and unexpected, as if he had been accumulating thoughts and deliberately rationing them out. By the third week, he was calling me Miss K, a gentle moniker that made my heart twist slightly every time. He was the type of kid who pretended he didn't need anyone. But you could tell he needed someone to question why he never smiled in photos. Someone to notice when he was quiet for too long. Later, I learned that his mother had died of an overdose 2 years before, and his father had vanished into another state with a new partner and a different life. Most people couldn't grasp how alone Jamal was. And maybe that's why we connected, because I was also alone. I started coming more frequently. For more than 3 years, I visited that shelter practically every day of the week. That equates to about 400 days every year. I packed snacks, board games, and books. I showed him how to make scrambled eggs without scorching them and how to mend a button on his shirt. We created cardboard cities, paper planes, and, finally, routines. Some days, he'd sit next to me and say nothing, which was okay. Other days, he'd talk for hours, telling me stories about students at school and a dream he had in which we lived in a house with a red door and a dog named Clutch. He used to call me Miss K, but when he forgot, he'd just say Mom. He always corrected himself straight away, but each time he did it, it drove something deeper into me, like a reality neither of us was quite ready to admit out loud. I never mentioned it, never made it awkward. I simply let it sit there, calm and warm, like a small seed waiting for the right season. Then one Thursday. It had been a grueling week. One of those weeks where work was horrible. My vehicle battery broke, and I received a message from my sister boasting about her baby learning to walk. I arrived at the shelter drained and exhausted. I didn't even attempt to fake it. I simply dropped into the couch next to Jamal, closed my eyes, and exhaled like if my soul were spilling out. He did not say anything for a while. He then said, so softly that I almost missed it, "Are you okay?" I nodded, too tired to lie, and said, "Just a hard day." Jamal remained silent again for a few beats. Then he glanced up at me, his voice scarcely more than a whisper, and spoke something that ripped my heart open. "Can I be with you forever?" And all of a sudden, everything I thought I understood about the course of my life changed. Because I wasn't finished. Not really. I had just begun working on something unexpected. There's a type of strength that doesn't make itself known with shouted voices or clenched fists, but rather quietly sneaks into your bones, like a second skeleton built of resolve. That was the kind of strength I needed as I began the adoption process for Jamal. An arduous, humiliating, slow-motion crawl through a system that seemed intent on reminding me at every turn that I was insufficient. Not married, not affluent, not young, and not ideal. Just a lady with a hurting heart, a steady income, and a son who'd already begun to beckon her home with his eyes even before the paperwork gave us approval. The initial appointment by Child Protective Services felt more like an interrogation than an examination. The caseworker sat in my too-clean living room, clicking her pen every few seconds like a metronome to calm my worries. She inquired about how I punished Jamal, what I would do if he was suspended, what trauma training I had undergone, and how I would manage him acting out. I wanted to scream, "Love is the answer to every goddamn question." Instead, I nodded, handed her written documents, and tried not to quiver as she perused my bookcase, as if it held the secrets of my soul. Every step involved a new hoop: background checks, house visits, court filings, psychological tests, and parenting classes. I jumped through them all, wounded my spirit on a couple, and kept my voice quiet when it would have been so much easier to shout. I did not tell my parents what I was doing. I didn't tell my sister either. I knew what type of response I'd get, and I wasn't prepared to hear it. Not from folks who still linked family with biology, and acted as if my uterus was a requirement for legitimacy. I wasn't prepared for the glances of sympathy, the patronizing advice, or worse, the judgment masquerading as care. Meanwhile, their universe spun in a strange orbit, with everything centered on Phoebe's swelling tummy. Every day the group chat was filled with ultrasound photographs, stroller advice, name surveys, and links to pastel-themed Pinterest boards. My mother began signing off texts with phrases like, "Love grandma-to-be," as if a pregnancy was rewriting her entire identity. It was like seeing a movie in which you weren't cast, just an extra standing off on the side while the credits rolled without your name appearing. Then came the baby shower. My sister's closest friend hosted the event in an upmarket venue with gold-trimmed invitations, and a gift registry that featured a $500 diaper pail. I received the invitation late, presumably as an afterthought, and almost did not go at all. But something in me, perhaps spite, boldness, or perhaps a fundamental human want to be seen, decided to show up. I arrived late on purpose, strolling in after the games had begun, and the wine had been poured, clutching my purse, which contained the adoption approval paperwork neatly folded between a card and a $20 baby blanket I had picked up at the last minute. Nobody saw me at first. My mother was holding court beside the mimosa bar, laughing loudly and never moving her hand away from Phoebe's rotund tummy, as if it were a treasured relic. My father was off in a corner, nodding along to another dad's story about car seats and sleep training. No one looked up when I walked in, not even my sister, who was busy unpacking a mountain of pink-wrapped gifts and thanking everyone with that bright, camera-ready smile that makes everything feel like a staged photo op. I remained near the back, pretending to admire the decorations. Everything was white and gold, with delicate blush accents, as if they intended to raise this child with an Instagram filter. A heart-shaped balloon arch stood above the cake table, with the main attraction displayed like a wedding centerpiece. It was a 3-tiered masterpiece, fondant flowers and delicious pearls, and it read, "Finally, a true mother in the family." The remarks were like a stomach punch. I'm not sure who wrote them, or if they meant it as a shot at me or simply didn't think about it. But it landed with surgical precision. I stood there staring at the cake, as laughing flowed around me like background noise in a dream. I grabbed into my handbag, felt the edges of that crisp approval letter, and remembered every night I'd stayed up wondering about whether I'd be able to keep Jamal. I remembered how the first time he had a nightmare, he crawled into my bed and said, "Don't leave, okay?" I reflected on how many people considered children as accessories, status symbols, or trophies. Yet he was none of these. He was my son, not because we shared DNA, but because we chose each other amid a world that attempted to tell us we weren't worthy of love. I leaned in closer to the cake, close enough that no one else could hear me, and let the words come out slowly and steadily, like a promise engraved in stone. We'll see about that. The drive to your childhood home around the holidays brings to the surface everything you thought you'd buried under years of treatment, hard-earned distance, and selective amnesia. The trees, the broken sidewalks, the porch light your father hasn't fixed since last winter, it all comes back to you like a rush of unwelcome memories. And yet, there I was, clutching the steering wheel a bit too tightly, peering in the rearview mirror every few minutes at Jamal, who sat in the back seat like a bundle of anxieties wrapped in a clip-on tie, and the kind of sweater that makes little boys appear like tiny professors. He'd been quiet the entire ride, his gaze darting between the windows and his hands folded in his lap as if he were preparing for an exam no one had studied for. I did not blame him. It was his first meeting with them, not just my parents but the entire family in one spot. My sister, her husband, her kid, the cousins, the casserole crowd, and the judging panel. I attempted to explain that it might be overwhelming, and that they might not comprehend right away, but he simply nodded and said, "I got you, Miss K." Which hurt me harder than it should have, given that he hadn't called me in weeks. The adoption had taken place 2 months earlier. Final, legal, done. He was mine in every manner that mattered, and yet, I hadn't informed my family. Not in person. I am not on a call. Not in a damn text. Perhaps it was cowardice. Perhaps it was self-preservation. Maybe it was that deep part of me that still believed they'd find a way to damage it, reduce it, and deprive it of the meaning it had come to represent. But now the secret was sitting in my back seat, swinging his feet and clutching a homemade card in his hand, which said, "Happy Thanksgiving," in pencil, and had a poorly drawn turkey wearing sunglasses. I put the car in park, took a deep breath, and returned my gaze to him. "You ready?" I inquired, my voice firm despite the fact that my stomach was flipping. He flashed me a half smile, more bold than happy, and added, "Yeah, I guess." Then he opened the door and walked outside, his shoes crunching on the gravel like the first note of a symphony I had no idea how to conduct. The house smelled of sage, cinnamon, and too many expectations. The living room was noisy, with voices chatting over one another, and the TV was broadcasting a football game that no one was watching. My sister was there, of course, with a baby on her hip and dressed as if she were hosting a cookery show rather than feeding her relatives. My parents were orbiting her like moons around a sun, their entire focus gravitationally drawn to the writhing bundle of new life she carried. Initially, no one noticed us walking in. I stood in the doorway with Jamal close to me, clutching my hand tighter than usual. He didn't say anything, just gazed up at me with wide, hesitant eyes, as if he were waiting for a signal. So I handed him one. I clasped his hand back, smiled, and entered the room. My mother was the first to notice. She turned, blinked as if she were seeing a ghost, and then forced a smile that was too wide to be genuine. "Oh, you made it, honey," she exclaimed, her voice full of helium and habit, her gaze straying to Jamal for a split second before returning to the infant as if she couldn't afford to lose focus on anything else. I introduced him casually, like I would any friend. "This is Jamal. He's with me now." This was all I said. There was no fanfare, no explanation, just the truth said quietly, as if it were a question no one dared to ask. Jamal did not say anything either. He remained close, polite and silent, most likely trying not to make the wrong move. He helped carry in the pie, laid the napkins, and grinned as my aunt ruffled his hair as if he were a pet she didn't know how to greet. No one questioned who he truly was. Nobody inquired why he was there. They simply accepted his presence like they would accept the weather. Quietly, passively, and with little discomfort when it got too close. Dinner was full of light talk and false laughter. This is the type of discourse that only touches the surface. Phoebe's kid was treated like royalty, kissed, cooed at, and praised as if he were a small god sent to confirm my parents' every life decision. I saw them light up whenever he drooled, farted or sneezed. And I sat there quietly, carving the turkey into little pieces for Jamal, ensuring he had enough gravy, and letting my silence speak for itself. Then something happened. Halfway through dinner, as we passed around the mashed potatoes, Jamal looked up from his plate, his voice mild but distinct enough to break through the pointless talk going on around the table. "Mom," he asked, "can you pass the mashed potatoes?" The room froze. Forks hovered in midair. Glasses halted in the middle of a sip. Conversations ended in throats. The quiet was so heavy that I believed it might break the walls. Jamal did not appear to notice. Perhaps he did, but claimed not to. He calmly stared at me, waiting for the potatoes, as if nothing had happened. I handed them to him without hesitation, smiled pleasantly and replied, "Of course." My father broke the silence, choking as if the phrase had gotten stuck in his throat, his face a slow-burning shade of perplexity, and something dangerously close to wrath. "What did he just call you?" he said, his voice cutting and low, as if he already knew the answer, but despised it more than he could express. And I stared him dead in the eye with a serenity I hadn't felt in years, thinking, now we begin. There's a certain kind of silence that only comes after truth is thrown like a stone into a still, shallow pond. The kind that doesn't break loudly, but instead ripples outward, spreading discomfort through every corner of the room, drawing eyes to the floor and stopping smiles in their tracks. That's how it felt after my father asked the question. After Jamal addressed me as Mom. The mask cracked, and the family act we'd all been putting on crumbled under the weight of a single honest phrase. The worst part was that it felt so familiar. As if we'd been preparing for this moment our entire lives. Like the awkwardness was just waiting for the right spark to ignite. I did not flinch. I did not stammer. I looked him in the eye, the same face that had kissed my skinned knees, repaired my bike chain, and taught me how to drive a stick shift. And I firmly stated, he's my son. The room went insane in 3 seconds flat. My sister let out a breathy scoff, as if someone had just thrown a glass of red wine across her white carpet. Seriously, she exclaimed, pushing her fork down so violently that the dish rocked beneath it. You couldn't let one day be about me? You had to pull this? Now what? You adopt a kid and think that makes you a mom? I did not respond to her. Not right away. I saw my mother's face shift between confusion and anguish, her lips shaking as if she were going to deliver a monologue she'd been practicing in the mirror for decades. She blinked too many times before whispering, "You adopted him? You didn't even tell us." 6 months ago, I answered, maintaining my voice level. It was finalized in August. The room blurred around the edges, a cacophony of overlapping voices, forks clattering, and someone jumping up too quickly and knocking over a chair. Jamal grasped my hand tightly under the table, his eyes wide and watching. And I wanted to gather him up and carry him somewhere peaceful, somewhere kind. But I did not move. I remained planted. Let the storm rage around us. Allow them to show me who they were when they weren't in control of the story. My father rose up slowly, as if about to give a verdict, and gazed at me with disdain that felt like acid in his teeth. That's not the same, he replied. You didn't give birth. You didn't. He paused and shook his head. You didn't make him. And that was all. That was the line. The last crack in the dam. I stood up, raised my glass. Not for a toast, but to cut. And let each word fall harsh and slow, like a blade dragged across years of quiet. You want to speak about what makes a true mother? Is it blood? Is it a hospital bracelet and a baby photo in a scrapbook you never read again? Or is it sitting through court hearings, trauma counselors, and nights when a 10-year-old wakes up screaming from dreams he can't explain? Is love something you earn, rather than something that just happens to be in your DNA? My mother whispered my name as a warning, but I refused to stop. Not now. Not after swallowing their silence for years. Let's talk about success, I replied, letting my gaze travel over them. Let's discuss how you define it. Is it the daughter who gave you a grandchild to brag about on Facebook? The one who did everything in the proper order, even when she didn't want to? Or is it the daughter who constructed a life after everything came apart, who never gave up on a child no one else cared about? Phoebe mumbled, Jesus, you're really doing this now. And pushed back her chair, as if she were about to escape. But I wasn't finished. I laid down my glass and dropped the final piece which I'd been carrying for years like a stone in my chest. I was pregnant once, I remarked, calm, bland and definitive. You just never noticed. You were too busy praising someone else's stomach. The room fell into startled stillness. I did not elaborate. I didn't say when, how, or what happened afterward. I didn't give them closure or clarity. They hadn't earned it. Allow them to sit with it. Allow them to experience just once what it was like to be unaware. To wonder. To mull over an answer they would never receive. Jamal looked up at me, his hand still wrapped around mine, and I felt a shift. Not forgiveness. Not even pride. Just a sense of serenity in knowing that I had finally reclaimed the story they had stolen. I turned to him, crouched slightly and whispered, Are you ready to go, kid? He nodded, put his small hand into mine, and we went past the astonished table, past the unspoken judgments and broken illusions, past the cold turkey and the unfinished pie, and out the front door without looking back. As we got to the porch, he paused, tugged my sleeve and murmured, Mom. Yeah, I responded, knowing I'd never grow weary of hearing it. He didn't say anything else but hugged me tightly, face pushed against my stomach. At that point, it made little difference how many of them didn't comprehend. It didn't matter who disagreed or remained stuck in their own narrow definitions. Because some scars do not show. Some families are not blood-related. And some vengeance is as easy as being called mom at the appropriate time. And behind that closed door, my father finally lowered his gaze. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. My father emptied my safe and said, "Your brother's tuition comes first." I replied, "Then explain that to the IRS. That call cost them $36,000. We accepted $36,000. Liam's tuition comes first, my father explained after emptying my lock safe. Then explain that to the IRS, I yelled while filing a fraud report that ruined the entire family. When I returned to live with my parents, I planned to stay for perhaps 2 months, possibly 3 if things didn't change. I just closed down a small business that I had worked hard on for 3 years. My girlfriend of 5 years ended our relationship 2 weeks after I sold it. I left our shared apartment with only a few bags and what little self-respect I still had. My parents lived in Northbridge Hills, in a house that I hadn't felt at home in since I was 19. Still, it felt familiar, and I didn't have many other options. I returned with the same peaceful, sleepy sense that many people experience after surgery. Calm, hopeful, and trying not to feel ashamed. I assisted by purchasing groceries, fixing things around the house, and being silent. At dinner, I didn't say much unless someone asked me directly. My money was safe. $36,000 in cash, concealed in a little lockbox behind shoeboxes in my closet. I had gradually saved it over a 10-year period. It wasn't a large sum, but it was sufficient to keep me from falling too hard. The family gathering took place about 6 weeks after I returned home. Just the typical crowd: uncles, aunts, cousins and children I didn't recognize. My father cooked on the grill. My mother made too much food. My younger brother, Liam, made a huge show of his arrival. He kept bragging about being accepted into this expensive liberal arts institution in Ashford Bay, with a business course that no one had ever heard of, but everyone pretended to know. He hugged me strangely, tight and too long, as if he was already apologizing for something. That night the house felt strangely quiet. Everyone was gone. The coffee machine had vanished. I went to my room to get a breath. For some reason, I strolled into the closet, moved the shoeboxes, and examined the safe. It appeared regular, locked and undamaged, but I was apprehensive. I filled in the code. It beeped as usual. I turned the doorknob. It was totally deserted. There is no money, paperwork, or anything. I stood for about a minute. Then I closed and reopened it, hoping that the funds would return. I began digging through the room, although deep down I knew it had been stolen. I heard someone approaching me. My father stood in the doorway, clutching a coffee mug as if he were on a stroll. He claimed they had all discussed it and decided I shouldn't stay there for free because I wasn't contributing, and Liam had a future to plan for. They decided to take my savings and utilize them to cover his first college tuition. He smiled, as if I should be proud of assisting out. I told him I would hire a lawyer. I told him what he did was illegal, and he had better hope I didn't take it any further. Then I said something that I knew would upset him. "Then you won't care what comes next." He laughed. The next morning my phone wouldn't stop ringing. 37 missed calls, voicemails and texts. My father yelled, "My mother is freaking out." Liam begged me not to damage anything. I didn't respond. I had already departed before daylight, carrying a duffel bag, my laptop, and a printed document they had no idea existed. Something from years ago with just enough legal heft to cause serious difficulty. I was already halfway to Blackwood Valley, on my way to Uncle Eugene's cabin. He responded after 2 rings. "They really pulled that crap, huh?" he commented. "Good. Now we make them regret it. Don't go back there." But I didn't. Not until it was time to help them understand what a true error looks like. Uncle Eugene's cabin was not an appealing vacation destination. It was a 2-story house in the deep forest, far from towns and cities. He had built the majority of it by hand after leaving a job in finance and deciding he was done with the contemporary world. The air smells like pine, firewood, and petrol. There's no internet. There was no television, only a landline phone, a generator, and a silence that felt more real than anything I had heard in a long time. When I drove up the gravel drive, Uncle Eugene was already seated on the porch, drinking from a chipped mug and wearing a sweatshirt with cut-off sleeves. He didn't ask any questions, just nodded and replied, "Your room's upstairs." The next morning we ate scrambled eggs and sausage on metal dishes while sitting on the porch. He lit a cigarette, despite his assurance that he had previously finished. Then he instructed me to walk him through the full matter. So I did. From the minute I noticed the money was gone, to my father's happy expression, to the moment they claimed it was a family choice to spend my savings to pay for my brother's college tuition. I recounted how my mother tried to portray it as a daring, charitable action, and I informed him that Liam remained silent the entire time, as if it had nothing to do with him. Uncle Eugene did not respond right away. After a pause, he inquired whether I still had Grandpa's trust documents. I nodded. They were inside my purse. The trust wasn't large, about $80,000 in total, but it did include a provision that particularly safeguarded me against being financially exploited by relatives. That was never something I considered important. Not till today. Uncle Eugene stood up, strolled inside the cabin, and returned with a dust-covered folder. Inside were documents from previous years, including old deals, correspondence, and digital receipts. And there in the midst is a handwritten debt letter signed by my father in 2015. It showed that he had borrowed $36,000 from Uncle Eugene. Exactly the same as what I kept hidden away. He never handed it back. Uncle Eugene said, "Always promised. Next paycheck, next raise, next bonus. I'm done waiting." That night, I called 3 people. The attorney who administered my trust, the family's bookkeeper, who had never been a favorite of my father, and a legal buddy in Lakeside City who handled property law, a quiet, detail-oriented gentleman who owed me one. Things had begun to move the following day. All it needed was an email with the required documents attached. My parents were officially notified by registered mail. I didn't bother listening to their response. 10 minutes later, Liam called me and asked, "What did you do?" I hung up without saying anything. I spent the following few days helping Uncle Eugene clear out the garage. That's when I discovered a box of old videotapes. Most were dusty and unsigned, but one had tape over the front that stated, "July 2002 reunion." Later that night, I watched it simply to pass the time. My father was seen on film shouting loudly in front of a bonfire while joking with 2 uncles. He was talking about how easy it was to move money without being tracked. At one time he even stated, "If I wanted to steal from my children they wouldn't notice." I stared at the screen, shocked. The next morning I digitally copied the footage. I sent it to my attorney. I also shipped a flash disk containing the film to my mother without my name on it. 3 days later, she called me. She wasn't calling to apologize, she was begging. I sat at Uncle Eugene's cabin's kitchen table and listened to her message on speaker. She was crying so hard that she could scarcely complete her sentences. She stated she didn't understand what was going on, that everything was falling, and that I needed to stop before I destroyed the entire family. I let the voicemail play until the finish and then deleted it. Uncle Eugene sat across from me drinking coffee. He remained quiet for a while. Then he glanced up and added, "Let's make this hurt." That was just what I needed to hear. I began with trust. Everything moved quickly when the audit was triggered. The trust was legally secured against any familial misuse, and my parents had unintentionally triggered it by stealing my money. It wasn't only about my $36,000 anymore. Every asset related to Grandpa's estate had to be reviewed and validated. That included the automobile lease my parents obtained in Grandpa's name following his death, as well as the vacation home they had been covertly renting out for extra cash. Within less than 2 days, a financial investigator had contacted them. I wasn't even involved in the phone calls, but I heard they were panicking. While that was happening, I made another move. When I first started my firm, I established a fictitious corporation named Liam CI Investments. I'd only used it once to send a joke invoice, but the account was legitimate and in Liam's name. It was perfectly legal and now extremely valuable. I investigated every unusual activity in that account, including the final $12,000 from my business, which had been moved right before I closed it down. With the documents I had, I made it appear as if Liam had hidden untaxed funds while applying for financial help and college awards. I submitted anonymous complaints to both the university and the federal student aid office. On the 3rd day, Liam's school financing was paused for evaluation. His enrollment was canceled. They booted him out of his dorm, and warned him not to return until the situation was resolved. He returned home that weekend. He called me 6 times, and then began sending messages. He expressed confusion about what I was up to. He insisted he hadn't stolen anything. He told me that it wasn't fair. I ignored it all. He was accurate. That wasn't fair. But neither was having your own parents take your money and claim it was a favor for your sibling. I still had some things to accomplish. Uncle Eugene pulled out the binder again. We prepared, signed, and officially documented a debt request for the $36,000 my father borrowed from him 8 years prior. We added the unpaid interest and filed it with the local records office. Then we made a formal claim on their home. This wasn't my childhood home. It was the larger house they purchased after my father's career promotion, with the intention of selling it before retiring down south. Now the house was under legal lockdown. It could not be sold, lent, or used for any transaction. 2 days later, an unknown number attempted to call me. It was my father. I did not pick up. I drove by the house instead. A moving truck parked outside, but no boxes were loaded. My father was pacing in the yard, ranting into his phone. My mother sat on the porch, face buried in her hands. Liam leaned against the automobile, as if he had no soul left. There was a black Mercedes SUV parked beside the curb. I remembered when they received it. My mother had referred to it as a reward car and claimed it was for Liam's graduation, but the ownership documents were in his name. After examining government records, I learned that they had listed it as a school-related asset in their financial documents, and my father had signed as a co-owner. I submitted an anonymous report with the IRS under a fictitious name, including every document I had: fake college costs, concealed cash, and co-signed debts tied to scholarship funding. It did not take long for the system to detect it. The financial account was flagged. An audit was initiated. Then I made the ultimate move. There was a small web portal in Glenmuir that reported on local frauds and dubious family stories. It wasn't a massive platform, but it was well read. I sent them a hidden message. I've attached an old video of my father in 2002 joking about getting money from his own children. I also included the house lien, Liam's revoked aid letter, and the entire trust case file. I told them the tale was accurate and provided all of the evidence to back it up. They posted it the next morning. Northbridge Hills family charged with financial crimes and inheritance fraud. The article circulated rapidly. A local news website picked it up. Someone uploaded it on Reddit. A former co-worker of my father also reacted, claiming that the business had already been investigating him. That is all it took. By the end of the week, my father was placed on leave. When a news crew appeared outside their home, I received a message from Liam. 3 words: why now? I didn't respond, but what I wanted to say was that you watched them hurting me and stood there. That evening, Uncle Eugene gave me a Pepsi. We don't chat much. We sat silently, watching the sky become orange behind the trees. Then he said, "This is only the beginning, kid." It was more than simply one blog post. It was the storm that followed. When the news broke, things went from creeping damage to complete collapse. My father's image was blurred in the article, but people found it out. His employers, golf club members, and neighbors. A girl I hadn't heard from in years messaged me. "Your parents are falling apart, huh?" Yikes. But it was no longer about feeling ashamed. Now they were losing control of everything. 3 days after the story was published, Uncle Eugene received a call from someone he knew in the estate court. It turns out that my father had submitted something new. He claimed that the trust had been abused, that Grandpa's will was faulty, and that the entire situation needed to be reviewed again. It was a frantic swing, one final, uncontrolled grasp for control. Uncle Eugene laughed as he heard it. He replied, "Let him go for it. He has no idea what we're sitting on." And he truly didn't, because I hadn't used the 2007 video, a home movie from Thanksgiving shot in our old house. My father was talking with one of his brothers about the additional money he'd been getting from private clients who only accepted cash. He boldly said he had never reported any of it. He described how he moved the money through accounts in his children's names so that no one would notice. He even stated on film that he opened a bank account in my name without telling me about it. I converted the video into a digital file and covertly gave it back to the IRS agent who was already working on the case. But that wasn't what crushed my mother. The bank records were the final straw for her. Uncle Eugene advised me to file a formal request for historical financial data related to the fictitious company Liam C. Investment. I figured we'd discover some weird deposit. That was all. But what I wasn't expecting was what we discovered about my mother. For over a year, she had been quietly moving little amounts. $300 here, $150 there. Directly from her personal account, to that bogus one. The notes connected to the transfers were not very explicit, but enough of them included phrases like Liam's tutoring or urgent, that the trend became clear. She wasn't simply aware. She was actively contributing. She was carefully changing money to make it appear as if Liam had adequate personal funds, which would certainly increase his prospects of receiving financial assistance. I didn't have to do anything else. When the university's assistance department evaluated the entire record, they did not just suspend his benefits. They permanently cut him off. Liam was not placed on hold. He was completely removed. His funding was canceled. His file was classed as fraudulent. 2 days later, Liam arrived at Uncle Eugene's cabin. I didn't realize he was approaching. He appeared smaller than before, more worn, as if he had been through a lot. We stood outside while Uncle Eugene remained inside to give us solitude. Liam inquired, "Do you dislike me?" I answered him, "No. I simply don't care anymore." Then he said something I did not expect. He informed me that our mother had moved into the guest bedroom. Our father was not speaking with anyone. They had recently gotten a warning from the IRS regarding unpaid taxes and a full audit. He stated that Mom had begun job seeking. Dad had quit shaving completely. Then came the surprise. "I found something in Dad's drawer," Liam explained. "You should see it." He handed me a sealed packet. Inside was a typed letter dated 2009 and addressed to Grandpa rather than me. It was a written confession. My father had borrowed $5,000 from Grandpa and promised to repay it within 5 years. He never returned a penny. The statement at the bottom of the letter hit me like a slap. "If you tell Alex or Eugene, it will tear this family apart." It was never simply about money. It was all about manipulation, control, and appearances. Liam fled without asking for forgiveness. He did not shed a tear. He did not attempt to explain. He just stated, "I had no idea they were doing all this. I swear." Later that evening, Uncle Eugene read the letter and stated, "Your dad's not just a liar. He's spineless." Then he smiled and asked, "Want to wrap this up? I've still got one more play left." What he said next transformed the game. At first I wasn't concerned with generating headlines. I didn't mind if my parents cried, if my brother had to miss school, or if strangers muttered about us at the store. All I wanted was to get my money back. They grabbed $36,000 from my lock safe as if it were nothing. I had saved money for nearly 10 years through side gigs, freelance work, and skipping things when I was broke. I had plans for the money, safety, freedom, the future. They treated me as if I were merely a faucet that they could drain. That's what sparked the fire in me. But now it has evolved into something new. Bigger, faster, and entirely out of their control. I had started a chain of events and it was going quickly. But even after the shell business, the IRS complaints, the house lien, the eviction notice, and the viral news item, I still hadn't received my money. Uncle Eugene warned me. "If you don't recover the cash, it's all just noise," he added. So I went back through everything. Transaction records, statements, anything I could find. And there it was, concealed inside a normal-looking bank summary with Liam's name. A bank transfer for slightly over $38,500, not sent or received, is lying there undisturbed. The bank's name did not look familiar. I checked the routing number. It was not from Northbridge Hills, it was from Rivermount, another branch of the same bank where my father worked before he was promoted. I called the bank and pretended to be Liam, claiming I couldn't access my account and needed to reset everything. They asked for some basic information to verify my identity. I already knew everything. His birth date, the last 4 digits of his social security number, and his address history. I'd lived with him. I had witnessed him fill out employment applications. They granted me temporary access, and there it was. $38,500 sat undisturbed under the heading, Education Disbursement Reserve. It wasn't scholarship cash, it wasn't loan assistance. That was my stolen savings were transferred to a clandestine account, and then parked there. Most likely as a backup in case school became more expensive. Uncle Eugene and I called his attorney, filed an official restitution demand, and supported it with trust documentation and financial records. However, we were both aware that legal processes are slow. So I took an unexpected action. I went directly to their residence. There was no warning, no communication, and they knocked as if nothing had happened. My mother opened the door. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I asked to speak with my father. He approached the doorway with his arms folded, an attitude of concrete. I looked him in the eyes and told him I'd found the money, and he now had two options. Return every $1 within 48 hours, or I'll take the case to civil court. I'd file charges for theft and financial deceit, and I'd incorporate the old VHS recording to add weight. I informed him that the trust team was preparing a comprehensive property seizure. Every account, asset, and suspicious transfer was going to be probed. I told him I didn't like stories or bogus apologies. I only wanted my money. He said nothing. Not one word. Just standing there. I walked away. 2 days later, I received an alert from my bank. A direct transfer had arrived, totaling $36,000. No comments, no names, and no memos. It's just the money. But that didn't please me because I already knew the truth. It wasn't guilt that forced him to pay. It was terrifying. Uncle Eugene smiled at me and said, "Let's make him even more scared." So now I had the money, on paper at least. 18 grand deposited directly into my account. No apologies, no message, exactly what I desired. It was the quickest action my father has done in years. When I told Uncle Eugene, he prepared hot tea for both of us. He lifted his cup and said, "That's something. But if you think he's done, you don't really know your father." He was correct. That night, sometime after 2 a.m., I received a text from my mother. Just one line. "He's about to post about you." I did not grasp it at first. However, 2 hours later, someone I hadn't communicated with since high school wrote me a message. It was a Reddit link. A throwaway account posted a lengthy rant in a parenting community. The title was all I needed to see: "Our son stole our future and is attempting to destroy our life. Warning to other parents." It was a heated diatribe. He described me as lazy, selfish, and worthless. I said I came home with little, refused to help, scorned their generosity, and shattered Liam's ambitions. He claimed I abused the system by using threats, dodgy lawyers, and old family feuds to my advantage. He even accused Uncle Eugene of inciting me against them. That line nearly had me laughing. But the ending was the strangest. He wrote, "If anyone knows how to stop a grown child from destroying your family name, please message me." I am serious. I did not respond. I did not need to. Reddit did the work. Strangers trashed his post. They connected to the news item, uploaded screenshots of proof, and utterly humiliated him. It got to the point where he deleted the entire profile less than half a day later. I backed up everything in case I needed it. But that moment was the final straw for me. I informed Uncle Eugene I'd finished reacting. I did not want to be a part of it anymore. Not only the house, not only the family title. I wanted out of the entire heritage. So I finally did something I had been thinking about for weeks. I officially applied to change my surname. It wasn't a big deal, simply a simple document at the clerk's window and a few certified approvals. But when I stepped outdoors, it felt as if someone had cut a rope around my neck that had been there for far too long. 2 days later, I grabbed my belongings and relocated to a little flat in my neighborhood. Nothing special, just a quiet unit on the corner of the top floor of a 3-story walk-up. It featured a fire ladder and an antiquated heating system that trembled when it ran. But it felt like mine. I bought a second-hand couch from Craigslist, some used vinyl albums from a resale shop, and hooked up my old sound system. I listened to the same album over and over for days. I did not tell my parents where I went. I did not leave an address. I changed my phone number and blocked any lines that led to their location. They had no way of getting in touch. The only thing I left behind was a secured file on my laptop in case I ever felt the need to contact. Inside was a single message. "You taught me to stand my ground. Then you pretended to be astonished when I said that. But I was not angry. I felt free. Uncle Eugene was just getting started." Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode. I refused my aunt's outrageous request, but she manipulated my husband into leaving me. I later found out he had been having an affair with her. I, 28F, have been married to my spouse, Adam, 30M, for 3 years. We had our ups and downs, as any marriage does, but I thought we were relatively stable. That is why the entire situation has taken me entirely by surprise, and I am now wondering whether I am somehow responsible for this catastrophe. My aunt, let us call her Natalie, has always been strange, to say the least. Growing up, she was the type of person who would perform a favor for you just to hold it over your head for the rest of your life. As a child, I remember her as an overbearing presence, always talking about how much she had done for everyone and how much they owed her. It was simply her method of retaining control. She is known in the family for being manipulative, but I never expected to get caught up in her games, especially not like this. Years ago, when I was younger, about 18 or 19, I was going through a difficult financial period. My parents were not present at the time, and I had recently moved out on my own, scraping by on part-time jobs and figuring things out. It was a terrible moment, and Natalie came through for me in ways that I sincerely appreciated at the time. She lent me some money, not a lot, but enough to get me through a couple of months until I could get back on my feet. I thanked her politely and eventually paid her back in full. I assumed that was the end of it, and for years it appeared to be. She never brought it up or stated that I owed her anything, so I believed that was all in the past. Fast forward to now, and Natalie has a daughter. Let's call her Grace. Grace and I were never close growing up. She is a few years younger than me, but we have always been in separate social circles. The reality is that we've never really liked each other. She has always been the spoiled, entitled type, getting everything she wants because Natalie always puts her first. Grace commands the spotlight at family gatherings. During the holidays, Grace receives the greatest gifts, the most praise, everything. I've learned to overlook it over time because that's how Natalie operates. She adores her daughter as if she were a princess, and the rest of us are expected to be grateful simply to be in their company. So Grace's birthday is coming up. Natalie has been hinting for weeks that her daughter's birthday should be exceptional and that she wants to offer her everything. At first, I didn't think much of it because Grace's birthday isn't exactly on my radar. When Natalie suggested it, I was nice and replied something like, "Oh, that sounds great," but I wasn't really paying attention. Then, out of nowhere, Natalie phones me one evening and says she has to speak with me about something serious. I assumed it was for Grace's birthday or a family event, so I agreed to meet up with her. When we met, Natalie made the most odd and absurd request I've ever heard. She told me straight out that the only thing Grace wants for her birthday is for me to leave my husband, Adam. I was stunned. Like, what? Why? Why would she even think about that? Natalie went on to say that Grace has had a crush on Adam for years, something I had no idea about, and that she believes he is her soulmate or something. According to Natalie, Grace has been longing for him since the day they met, and now that she is about to turn 26, she believes this is her final chance to be with him. She truly believes Adam belongs with her and that I am preventing them from being happy together. At first, I assumed this was a joke. Natalie couldn't possibly expect me to leave my spouse as a birthday present for her daughter. But as she continued speaking, I understood she was dead serious. She even brought up the money she lent me years ago, claiming that I owed her and that this was the best way to repay her. According to Natalie, if I were truly grateful for her assistance when I was struggling, I would do this for her daughter. I was extremely shocked. I couldn't believe what I heard. Of course, I said no. I was not going to end my marriage over an absurd demand from my aunt. I informed Natalie that this was preposterous, that I would never abandon Adam, and that I owed her nothing. I had reimbursed her for the money, and whatever favor she believed she had done for me gave her no right to demand this. She didn't take it well. Natalie got angry and accused me of being ungrateful and self-centered. She went on and on about how Grace deserved happiness, how she had made many sacrifices for me over the years, and how I was ruining everything by refusing to see reason. I walked out of that conversation exhausted but convinced that I had done the right thing. I was not going to allow her to influence me like that. I didn't give it much thought after that, but a few days later, things started to change between me and Adam. He grew aloof and colder than normal. When I asked him what was wrong, he just brushed me off. I assumed he was upset at work or something, but then he sat me down and announced that he was leaving me. He didn't go into great detail, just expressing that things weren't going well and that he thought it was time for us to part ways. I was devastated. This came out of nowhere, and I had no idea what had happened so fast. It wasn't until a mutual buddy contacted me that I learned what had transpired. Natalie allegedly went behind my back after our talk and told Adam everything, but she twisted the tale so that it appeared I was to blame. She informed Adam that I had been ungrateful for everything she had done for me, that I had no regard for family, and that I had been keeping secrets from him. She even made up stories about how distant and cold I had been with Adam, twisting the situation to make it look that I was the problem in our marriage. According to what I've heard, She convinced him that I wasn't telling him the truth, which pushed him over the line. So now I'm attempting to pick up the pieces of my life after my spouse abandoned me due to my manipulative aunt. Part of me wonders whether there was already something wrong with our marriage, and this was the final straw. Maybe I missed some signs. Maybe I wasn't as good a wife as I thought. But another part of me is outraged. How could Natalie have done this to me? How could she go behind my back and destroy my marriage simply because I refused to give her what she wanted? And why did Adam believe her so quickly? Shouldn't he have trusted me enough to at least discuss it with me before making such a big decision? I'm so confused and hurt right now, and I don't know what to do. My family is divided on the issue, with some saying I should have simply let it go and others agreeing Natalie is out of line. But the reality is, I don't think this is just about Natalie anymore. I believe there is a greater issue at play, such as Adam searching for an out and seeing this as the perfect reason. I'm not sure whether I'm overreacting, but I can't shake the sensation that this entire thing is somehow my responsibility. Perhaps if I had handled things differently with Natalie and paid more attention to Adam's needs, none of this would have occurred. But, at the same time, I feel as if I was backed into a corner and would have lost regardless of what I did. So I die for refusing my aunt's foolish request to leave my husband as a birthday present for her daughter. Am I to blame for my husband leaving because of what she told him? I just need some feedback on this because everything seems to be spiraling out of control right now, and I'm not sure where to turn. Update 1. Hello everyone, it's been a few weeks since my life totally crumbled, and I'm still trying to figure out how to go on from what occurred with my aunt, Natalie, and my husband Adam. Things have been difficult to process. I never thought I'd be providing an update, yet here I am, trying to make sense of it all. At first, I assumed it was all due to Natalie's intervention, but considering everything that has transpired since, I'm beginning to wonder if there was something else going on between Adam and me, something I missed. I've been trying to piece it all together, and I keep coming back to the same question. Was this previously broken, and I simply didn't realize it? When Adam told me he was leaving, he didn't give me much detail. He merely told me that things were not going well and that he thought it was time to part ways. There was no big struggle or explosion, it was just over. I was heartbroken and puzzled. I assumed we were secure, or as secure as any marriage with ups and downs. Everything felt like it happened out of nowhere. After sitting with my thoughts and feelings for a few days, I decided to contact Adam. I wasn't willing to give up without at least discussing it. I texted him, asking if we could meet up and discuss what had transpired. I didn't get an answer straight away, and I spent the following 3 days in limbo, waiting for a response. Finally, Adam responded back, indicating he was not interested in chatting and that he had made his decision. I was devastated. It was as if he had closed the door on everything without thinking. However, this was not the worst part. He also told me he was already seeing someone else. Mind you, it hadn't even been a month since he left me when I discovered how quickly he had moved on. My world came apart. Was this someone he had been seeing before our breakup? Was I so blind that I didn't notice him drifting away sooner? I didn't ask him any of these questions because, frankly, I didn't want to know the answers. It felt like everything we had was erased in the blink of an eye. It's impossible to convey the range of emotions I've been feeling: anger, betrayal, confusion. It's all coming together. How did he manage to move on so quickly? How could he be so willing to let go of what we've accomplished? I'm wondering if this new relationship started before he left, or if there were issues in our marriage that I simply overlooked. I've been looking over every discussion we've had in the last few months to see if there were any red signals I overlooked. Nothing stands out. We had our regular fights, nothing major, and I never anticipated things to fall apart so quickly. Maybe I was too preoccupied with my own life and missed the signs that he was drifting away, but I also wonder if Adam had been looking for an escape all along and Natalie's manipulation was just the excuse he needed. My family is divided on the whole issue. Some people say I should have let it go to prevent the conflict with Natalie. Others agree that Natalie was completely out of line, and that I made the perfect decision by refusing her. However, in the end, none of this matters. The damage is done. Adam is gone and I'm forced to figure out how to restart my life now that he's moved on with someone else. I haven't spoken with Natalie or Grace since everything went down. They are no longer a part of my life, and I am grateful not to be exposed to their toxic energy. The thought that Natalie could go behind my back, influence Adam, and essentially ruin my marriage still baffles me, but I've recognized that there's no sense in attempting to undo what happened. What's done is done, and I need to go on. I'm going to be honest. I believe Adam is seeing Grace. I mean, it just makes sense that Natalie wanted me to end my marriage so Grace and Adam could be together. So, perhaps that is what is happening. I don't know, but I want to find out. Regarding Adam, I wish I could say I'm over it, but I am not. I still love him, and I probably always will. But I know our marriage is over. He has moved on, and it is now my turn to do the same. It will take time for me to recover from this, and there are days when the pain is terrible. But I want to get past it someday. Update 2. Hello everyone. First and foremost, thank you so much for all of your support, guidance, and kind words on my last post. I never anticipated so many people to care about my predicament, and it has meant everything to me. Before I begin the update, I'd like to address something that many of you mentioned. Many people suspected Adam was seeing Grace, and to be honest, I was beginning to believe it as well. Natalie had pushed me so hard to leave Adam for Grace's sake, and the way things turned out convinced me that there was something between them. Why would she make such a foolish request? I couldn't believe my aunt would ask me to leave my husband as a birthday present for her daughter if Adam and Grace weren't already dating. That's when things took an unexpected and really distressing turn. About 2 weeks ago, I got a message from Stephen, my Aunt Natalie's husband and Grace's father. I hadn't spoken to him in a long time, especially after things had gone bad, but he pleaded to meet in person, claiming he had something vital to tell me. Given how crazy things had already become, I was doubtful at first. I didn't want to get engaged in any more family drama, especially after what happened to Natalie and Grace. But something about Stephen's tone made me want to hear him out, so I agreed to meet up. When we met, Stephen appeared tired, as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. I knew straight away that whatever he had to say would not be easy. He began by apologizing for Natalie, Grace, and all that had occurred. I had no idea where he was going with this, but then he revealed something unexpected. Adam was not seeing Grace. He was seeing Natalie. Yes, it's my aunt. Natalie, my manipulative and toxic aunt, is 50 years old. I was speechless. My mind went blank as I tried to figure out what he was saying. For a brief moment, I believed I had misheard him, but Stephen went on to recount everything in horrific detail. Natalie and Adam appeared to have been having an affair for some months. Stephen discovered it when he returned home early from a business trip one weekend. He walked into their house, into his bedroom, and found Natalie and Adam in bed together. My spouse and aunt, in their bed. Stephen admitted he had no idea how long it had been going on, but based on some of the texts and messages he discovered, it had been at least a few months, if not more. Natalie had been seeing Adam behind my back as she pressed me to leave him for Grace. The whole birthday present foolishness was just a distraction, a ruse to deceive me and everyone else while she secretly had an affair with my husband. I felt as if the ground had been pulled out from beneath me. I thought I was prepared for anything, but this exceeded my expectations. I was having trouble understanding what Stephen was saying. Natalie, among other persons. I knew she was manipulative, but I didn't expect her to do this. And Adam, the man I thought I knew and had built a life with, had he been sneaking around with my aunt the entire time? But it didn't end there. Stephen went on to inform me that Natalie had decided to leave him. Natalie intended to leave Stephen on Grace's birthday, and she and Adam were apparently planning to blow everything up. Yes, you have read right. She planned to devastate her own family on her daughter's birthday before fleeing with my husband. Grace was completely oblivious of all of this, which was just another layer of deception. Natalie had used her daughter as a pawn in this horrible, twisted game, fooling everyone into believing Grace had affections for Adam while, in reality, she was sleeping with him. Stephen informed me about it, and I sat there startled. I was unsure how to react. I had been concentrating all of my efforts on determining whether Adam was seeing Grace when, in fact, Natalie, my own aunt, had misled me in the worst conceivable way. After Stephen finished telling me everything, he handed me his phone and showed me some of the messages between Natalie and Adam. I couldn't look at them for long because it was too painful, the way they talked about me, their plans, and how they were going to start over after the dust had fallen. It made me physically ill. I still can't believe it. I spent weeks trying to believe that Adam could have feelings for Grace, but now, this was beyond anything I could have anticipated. Natalie had planned the entire affair from the beginning. She misled me and her own spouse while secretly having an affair with my husband. I've been trying to figure out where I should go next, but I'm still in shock. I thought I was dealing with a husband who left me for another woman, but now I'm having to accept the fact that he left me for my aunt, whom I considered family. I'm not sure if they're still seeing each other or if their little scheme failed when Stephen caught them. Part of me doesn't care at this point. What is done, and regardless of what happens to them, the harm has already been done to me. I wish I could say there is a silver lining, but for the time being, all I can do is attempt to get through it. I'll keep you all updated if anything changes, but for the time being, I'm just figuring out how to move ahead after everything that's happened. Thank you for your continued support. It has been a lifeline during this horror. Update 3. Hello everyone, it's been a while since the last update, and a few things have happened in the interim, so perhaps this is the final update to the horror I've been experiencing. I faced Adam, and while the outcome was not what I had hoped for, it did provide some closure. I suppose I always knew I'd have to address him personally. I simply didn't expect it to be that dramatic, or for him to beg me to take him back after discovering Natalie wasn't who he thought she was. It's tough to understand how I felt leading up to that moment, but I knew I couldn't move on with my life unless I confronted Adam. I needed to express my feelings and get the complete truth from him, no more running or second guessing. So I finally reached out to him and told him we needed to meet and chat. We met in a park, somewhere neutral, where I felt I could keep my emotions under control. I did not want the confrontation to take place in our home, which had so many memories, both good and bad. I got to the park and finally saw him after so many days. It felt odd. He looked fatigued, as if he hadn't slept in days, but I didn't care enough to ask him what had occurred or why he was so tired. I just went right to it. I assured him I knew everything. I informed him that I knew about Natalie and that she was the lady he had been fooling around with while I sat at home, trusting and loving him. The shock on his expression was not the same as when someone is apprehended. It felt more like shame. He couldn't look me in the eye for a time. He did not defend himself, which shocked me because I had expected excuses or an attempt to cover up. Instead, he simply nodded and confessed it. He verified everything. In some ways, it felt underwhelming. There was no rage or screaming, just a pitiful admission that he had damaged our marriage by having an affair. I had a lot I wanted to say. I had spent hours rehearsing this in my thoughts, but when the moment arrived, all I could say was, why? I needed to know what was wrong with us, or with me, that he would cheat on me like this. Adam began discussing how he was no longer pleased and how our marriage had become a routine. He mumbled something about being stuck, and Natalie helped him feel alive again. It felt like a punch in the belly. I couldn't believe he was using boredom as an excuse to wreck our lives. I stood there feeling disgusted. I informed him immediately that his selfishness had cost him everything. There were many other methods for him to deal with his feelings of being stranded. We could have sought therapy, taken a break, and communicated, but he decided to cheat on me, lie to me, and end our marriage. And that's when I informed him. I informed him that I was filing for divorce. I shouted it clearly and without hesitation, and a strange sense of power came over me. For the first time, I felt in control. I wasn't pleading with him to stay, nor was I forgiving him for his horrible decisions. I was finished. That is when the unexpected happened. Adam, who had been so casual about the affair up until this point, suddenly broke down. I'd never seen him like this. He genuinely began crying. I'm not talking about a few tears. He sobbed. He grabbed my hands and begged me not to forward with the divorce. He explained that everything with Natalie had come apart, that she was not who he thought she was, and that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. He stated that once the excitement of their affair faded, her actual personality emerged. Apparently, she is manipulative and domineering, often starting conflicts and even threatening to reveal their affair if he did not do things her way. He claimed she had made his life a terrible nightmare, and he regretted everything. It was strange to stand there and see this man, who had before appeared unaffected, break down in front of me. He told me he felt adrift without me and couldn't believe he'd given up our life together for someone like Natalie. He stated that he still loved me and would do anything to make things right. But honestly, I didn't feel anything. I had no sympathy for him, no desire to reclaim him, and no pity for him because of Natalie's conduct. I felt numb. The trust was gone. He had damaged it, and no amount of tears or apologies would fix it. I informed him that it was too late. I informed him that there was no way to restore what he had done, and I was not interested in attempting to heal the damage to our marriage. I believe that's when he understood I was serious. I was not going to forgive him, and there was no way to make things right or get back together. He kept begging, attempting to persuade me that we could work this out, that he was willing to do whatever it needed. But I'd already made a decision. I informed him that I deserved better, that I was moving on with my life, and that we had no future together. I believe part of me was expecting him to become defensive or lash out, as he had done in the past when we battled. But this did not happen. Instead, he broke down even more, realizing he'd lost me forever. I departed after that. I walked away without looking back. I've already filed for divorce, and it feels like a great weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I'm not claiming it's been easy. I still find it difficult to breathe at times because I am so heartbroken and deceived. But I know I made the correct decision. I know this is what I need to do to improve myself and start a new life. According to what I've heard, Natalie is furious with Adam for attempting to reconnect with me. Apparently, things between them worsened not long after the truth was revealed, and they are now both unhappy. Adam is paying the price for his decisions, and while I would never wish such chaos on anyone, I am no longer concerned. I don't care what happens between them. I'm just happy to be free of it. I've cut Natalie out of my life permanently. There is no forgiveness, no opportunity for reconciliation. I have no room in my heart for folks who betray me like way. She has left, and I am now focusing on myself. This has been the most difficult experience I have ever had, but it has taught me a lot about my own strength. I've discovered that I don't need someone who disrespects, lies, or cheats on me. I deserve a partner who appreciates me and our relationship, and I will never settle for anything less again. So that's it. I'm taking each day as it comes. It will take time to heal, but I am confident that I am on the correct path. Thank you to everyone who has offered me advice and support along the process. It mattered more than you could ever realize. I'm now ready to be done with this drama and move on with my life. After my parents refused to help babysit and compared my children to my sister's kids, I stopped helping them with free house repairs. The following day, my phone burst. Thanksgiving was intended to be a time for family, excellent food, and a reprieve from reality, but it turned out to be a disaster. We were all gathered at my parents' new property, which I had spent the previous 2 months renovating for them. They had asked me to do it, so I accepted. New floors, plumbing repairs, repainting, and electrical work, I spent every free hour there, covered in dust and sweat, ensuring that everything was flawless. Meanwhile, they sat peacefully in their flat, waiting for the house to be completed. I did not complain. They were my parents, and helping them was the right thing to do. In exchange, I had requested only one thing: occasional babysitting. Not every day, not every weekend, only when I needed it. My wife died a few years ago, and I was doing my best to raise my children alone. But sometimes I needed assistance. I believed it made sense, and they had always agreed, until that night. We were in the middle of supper when my father laid down his fork and said, "We're not going to babysit your kids anymore." I assumed he was kidding, but his expression was serious. The table became quiet. Then he went on to imply that they were exhausted, that my children were too much, and, worst of all, compared them to my sister's children. He mentioned how well-behaved, quiet, and easy they were, unlike mine. I looked over to my sister. She didn't say anything, just sat there smiling. Something inside of me twisted. I'd spent 2 months fixing up her house for free. They had never had to lift a finger, and now they were telling me that my children, were a burden to them, that they weren't as good as my sisters. I took a big breath and tried to hold it together. Then I said, "Really? I'll stop fixing your house." There was silence. My father just looked at me like I had hit him. My mother stepped in and tried to smooth things over. She started talking about how I didn't realize how difficult it was for them, and how much they had done for me. She made it appear as if I was pushing them to do unpaid work, while in reality, I had barely asked for anything. Before I could react, several of our other relatives spoke up. They did not like it. One of my aunts remarked it was foolish to talk about my children in that manner, especially in front of them. Another uncle pointed out how much I had already done for my parents, thereby saving them thousands of dollars on repairs. My sister remained mute, soaking all the accolades for her wonderful children. I stood up. "Thank you for a great Thanksgiving dinner," I told you. "I'm extremely grateful for everything." I then turned to my children and informed them that we were going. We collected our coats and hurried to the car, leaving a table filled with startled expressions. That night, my children questioned me why their grandparents had said those things, and why they were constantly comparing them to their cousins. I moaned and stroked my cheek. The world isn't always fair, and sometimes grandparents aren't the nicest people. They gazed at me, expecting for more, so I made sure to express what was most important. "But I love you both more than anything." I went to bed, weary. I had no regrets, but it hurt nonetheless. The next morning, I had 52 missed calls from my parents. When I saw 52 missed calls, I assumed something horrible had happened. My stomach dropped. I instantly called my mother back, half expecting to hear about an emergency. Instead, as soon as she answered the phone, she began ranting as if I had personally set fire to her home. "John, you need to come over right now," she urged. I frowned. "Why? What happened?" She skirted the question and insisted that I come over. My father also got on the phone, his tone tense but controlled. "Just come, John. We need to talk." I was not foolish. I knew exactly what this was about, but I knew I had to leave nonetheless. My children still had some belongings in their house, and I did not want to leave them behind. So I informed them that I'd be there in an hour. When I got inside their flat, I knew things hadn't calmed down overnight. My mother was pacing. My father was standing in the kitchen with his arms crossed, and my sister, who had seemingly decided to become even more involved, was seated on the couch, as if she were moderating a presidential discussion. It began immediately as I closed the door behind me. My mother leaped in first. "John, don't you think you overreacted?" I stared at her. "Overreacted?" My father jumped in. "Look, we're sorry if we hurt your feelings, but you can't just refuse to finish the house because of this." I nearly laughed. There it was. That was what this was all about, not the family or the children, but the house. I shake my head. "So, let me get this straight. You call my kids a burden, say they're too much for you, compare them to my sister's kids in front of everyone, and now when I say I won't do the work you asked me to do for free, I'm the problem." My mother placed her palm on her chest, as if I had just badly offended her. "That's not fair, John. We have done a lot for you. We took care of your kids for years." My sister has finally spoken up. "Mom, Dad, you really shouldn't compare the kids like that." For the first time, my parents seemed astonished. My mother blinked at her. "You don't think we were right?" My sister shrugged. "It's not about being right. You just shouldn't have said it in front of the kids. It's not okay." I must admit, I didn't expect her to say that. She wasn't exactly defending me, but she wasn't supporting them either. Instead of backing down, my father turned back to me. "John, we just want this to be over. You're not going to cut us off over something so small." I looked him dead in the eyes. "Watch me." My mother gasped, as if I had threatened to place her in a nursing home. My father began to say something else, but I was done. I went to the closet, got my children's clothes, and proceeded out the door. And that was when my mother said it. "John, you're being selfish." I paused. Selfish? After 2 months of free labor? After bending over backwards to help them? After never complaining about all the times they needed something from me? I turned around. Selfish? You want me to work on your house, but you won't even look after your own grandchildren. You want my time, my effort, my energy, but the second I need something, it's suddenly too much for you. My mother opened her mouth to respond, but I was finished. You don't have to babysit anymore, but I don't have to fix your house either. Then I walked out. That was only the beginning. Things worsened during the next few weeks. First, they attempted to force me to return. Then they attempted to guilt me. Then they begged, because they had a serious situation. Hiring professionals would cost a fortune, and the longer I ignored them, the more desperate they became. But, just when I thought they couldn't get any more manipulative, something happened that changed everything. For the first few days following the incident, I ignored their calls. I ignored their text messages as well, then began the guilt trip. First, my mother gave the typical, "We're getting old, John, we won't be around forever" spiel. Then my father wrote me a long note about family loyalty and how I was being unreasonable over a minor misunderstanding. Meanwhile, my sister remained relatively silent. I assumed she was trying to stay out of it, but at least she spoke up briefly during the debate. Then, about a week after Thanksgiving, I received a message from my father that made me laugh. "John, we forgive you? Can you come finish the house this weekend?" Forgive me? I did not even respond. That's when they changed their strategy. At first, they tried to bribe me. My mother called to say they'd start babysitting again if I finished the house. I told her no. My father then texted me that they'd be willing to help with the kids if I came over to talk things out. I told him no. Then they sent my sister to try. She called one night and began with light conversation, inquiring about my children. Then she spoke casually. "You know, maybe you should just finish the house. They're being stubborn, but it's probably easier if you just get it done." I laughed. "So I do free labor and in return, they insult my kids, and you think I'm the one who should back down?" She paused. "I mean, it's their house, John. They're just stuck in their ways. You know how they are." "I do. That's why I'm not doing it." She exhaled. "Look, I get it, okay? But they're never going to admit they were wrong. They're our parents." That struck me. She knew they were mistaken. She wasn't even attempting to dispute it, but she knew they'd never say it aloud. I told her I had to leave and hung up. That night, I considered everything. About how for years, I had done things for them without expecting anything in return. About how they had never showed me genuine appreciation. They acted as if it was my responsibility to help them but an inconvenience to help me. And I determined I was finished, completely. That was the night I blocked their numbers. 2 days later, my sister arrived at my place unexpectedly. I opened the door and noticed her standing there, looking embarrassed. "We need to talk," she said. I allowed her inside. She sat down at my kitchen table and stared at me for a moment. Then she sighed. "They called the contractor," she explained. It astonished me. "Good, so they finally got someone to do it?" She grimaced. "Yeah, but there's a problem." I waited. "They got scammed." I blinked. She nodded. "Dad hired some guy off Facebook because he was cheaper than a real company. Paid him up front and now he's gone. Took the money and disappeared." I couldn't help it. I laughed. My sister shot me a glance. "John, they lost $10,000. I stopped laughing. 10 grand? Wait, where did they even get that much money? "They borrowed some of it," she told me. "From family." That part took me off guard. "Who?" I asked. She hesitated before saying, "Uncle Mark, Aunt Linda, even Grandma." I sat back. They borrowed from other individuals to avoid acknowledging they needed me, and now they were $10,000 in debt with a half-finished house. I shake my head. "That's not my problem." My sister nodded slowly. "I know, and I told them that." That made me pause. "You what?" She exhaled. "I told them they should have just apologized to you. That they did this to themselves." For the first time in this disaster, I felt a shift. My sister, their favorite and golden kid, had actually spoken up for me. She leaned forwards. "John, they're desperate. They want you to come back. They're still being stubborn, but they know they messed up." I crossed my arms. She shrugged. "And I think you should make them beg." Hearing my sister say that threw me off. She had always been their favorite, the one they admired and supported. And now she told me to make them beg? I raised an eyebrow. "You really think they'll do that?" She flashed me a half smile. "They don't have a choice?" For the first time in my life, I felt in control. I slumped back in my chair. "So what exactly do they want from me?" She exhaled. "They want you to come over and talk." I laughed. "Yeah, I've heard that before." She nodded. "I know, but this time they're not in control, you are." And she was correct. I did not go that day. I did not go the following day either. I let them sit in their messes. Allow them to sweat. A few days later, my mother broke. She wrote a rambling text that was part apology and part excuse. She admitted that they may have been unjust and should not have said what they did. But what is the funniest part? "We should have handled things differently, but you also overreacted." I genuinely laughed when reading it. Even when they were desperate, they had to assign some blame. I ignored the message. Then my father tried. His response was simpler. "John, we need you. Come back and finish the house. We'll figure everything else out later. No apologies, just say, 'We need you.'" I also overlooked that. The next night, my sister called. "Okay," she said. "I think they're actually breaking this time." "What happened?" "They told me to tell you they're sorry." I blinked. "Wait, they actually said that?" She paused. "Well, they told me to tell you, not in those exact words, but..." I exhaled. "Close enough." She then said something that astonished me. "They asked if I thought you'd ever speak to them again." That made me pause. For the first time, I realized they were truly terrified. They were concerned not only about the house, but also that they had pushed me too far. Honestly, they had. I agreed to meet with them, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to hear from them. I told my sister I'd come over on my own terms. When I walked into their apartment, they seemed less confident and more apprehensive. My mother had been crying. My father looked fatigued. I sat, crossed my arms, and waited. Finally, my father sighed. "We messed up, John." That was as close to an apology as I was going to receive. He went on to say how they didn't plan to hurt me, but were frustrated, exhausted, and stressed. That the home had gotten overbearing, and that they had spoken inappropriately. Then my mother finally spoke. Her voice was quiet. "We love you and the kids." And, for the first time, I believed her. I waited for them to be silent for a bit before saying, "I'm not finishing your house." My mother gasped, like if I'd slapped her. My father tensed. "John," he answered. I cut him off. "You had 2 months of free labor from me. You had help whenever you needed it, and the one thing I asked for in return was too much for you. Now I'm done. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm not fixing your house." Silence. My mother seemed to want to quarrel, but she didn't. My father stared at the table, My sister was just watching. Then I stood up. But I'm willing to move forward if you stop treating me like I owe you something, if you stop treating my kids like they're less than my sisters, and if you understand that from now on, if I help you, it's because I want to, not because you expect it. They nodded because they had no other option. I left that day feeling I'd won. And for the first time in a long while, I felt liberated. Things did not suddenly improve following the meeting. My parents were not suddenly better people, and I wasn't foolish enough to believe they wouldn't try to push the boundaries again. But something had changed. They realized I wasn't going to be their handyman, backup plan, or safety net. They were afraid because they knew I was about to walk away. For a few weeks, there were no needless phone calls or guilt trips, only silence. It was nearly calm. Then, one afternoon, I received a text from my mother. "Can we take the kids this weekend? We miss them." I stared at the text for a moment. This was the same woman who had referred to them as a burden and had made comparisons to my sister's children in their presence. Has she suddenly missed them? I tried to dismiss it, but I remembered my children. So I asked her, "Do you want to go?" They paused. My youngest, Ben, appeared hesitant. My oldest, Emily, crossed her arms. Are they going to be weird again? I was honest. Maybe. They thought about it. Then Emily shrugged. I guess we can go. So I quickly said, "Sure, I'll drop her off at 5. My parents were not the same that weekend when I dropped her off. My mother seemed extremely kind, as if she was trying too hard to show she wasn't the bad guy. My father was silent. I stayed for a few minutes, just enough to ensure my children's comfort. Then, before I left, my father pulled me aside. "We really love them, John," he remarked. "We just messed up." It wasn't a full apology, but for my father, it was as close as I could get. I just nodded. Good. Then don't mess up again. Later that night, I received a call from my sister. "I have to tell you something," she said. Her voice conveyed seriousness. "What is it?" she exhaled. "Mom told me something the other day about why she stopped babysitting." I sat upright. "Because they were tired, right?" She paused. "No, that wasn't it. At least not the whole reason." I frowned. "What was it?" She took a deep breath. "You were jealous, John." I blinked. "Jealous of what?" She paused. "Of you. Of how much the family stood by you at Thanksgiving. Of how close you are with your children. About how you became the center of attention when they're used to it being me. That really threw me. That doesn't even make sense." "It does to them," she explained. "You felt like you lost control, like people were looking at you as the good son, the responsible one, and that pissed them off." I sat there, trying to digest everything. My parents were more than just tired of babysitting, they were bitter. I'm bitter because I was a nice father. It was wild. It was sad. And that just reinforced one thing for me: they would never really change. I did not inform my parents what my sister said. It wouldn't have altered anything, but I did modify how I handled them from that point forward. Everything was on my terms. When they wanted to see the children, only if my kids wanted to. If they needed my assistance with something, they had to ask, not assume. If they ever disrespected my children again, that was it, no more chances. And the best part? They knew. For the first time in my life, I was not simply their son. I was someone they needed to respect. And that was worth everything. For a while, everything remained polite. My folks were on their best behavior. They didn't push, guilt me, or ask me for help around the house anymore. It was almost as if they had finally understood. Until they hadn't. My aunt contacted me one Sunday afternoon and asked, "John, did you see what your mom posted on Facebook?" It was never a pleasant sentence to hear. When I opened the app, there was a lengthy, dramatic post from my mother about how family members should always help one another and how some people forget where they came from. After everything we've done, it's heartbreaking to see our own son turn his back on us. She did not mention my name, but everyone understood who she was talking about. And the best part? She concluded, "At least we still have our amazing daughter, who never left us." That was it. That was it. I was done. I didn't text or phone her. I wrote a simple response to the post. "You're right, Mom. Family should help each other. That's why I spent 2 months fixing your house for free while you sat in your apartment. That's why I asked for nothing in return except that you treat my kids with basic respect. And when you called them a burden and compared them to my sister's children, I realized that you don't want a family. You want servants. And I'm not playing that role anymore." I pressed submit and saw the torrents open. The first comment came from my uncle. "Wow, I didn't know the whole story. This is messed up." Then my aunt. John is right. You took advantage of him. He gave you everything and you repaid him by insulting his children. Unbelievable. Then my grandmother, the one from whom they borrowed money. You told me you needed the money because John refused to help you, but you never told me why. Now I see the truth. Comment after comment sided with me, and the best one came from my sister. I love mom and dad, but John is telling the truth. They treated him unfairly, and he has every right to leave. My golden sister, the one they always favored and supported, didn't defend them. I sat back and watched my parents' reputations crumble in real time. About an hour later, the post was deleted. My mother tried to call, but I didn't answer. She then texted, "Was that necessary?" I responded, "Was your mail necessary?" There was nothing. A few days later, my father caved in. He simply wrote, "We were wrong. We're sorry." No excuses. No blame. And, frankly, I didn't need anything else. I never worked on their home again. They had to hire someone at full price. I would never let them shame me into anything again. If they wanted to see my kids, it was because they wanted to, not because they forced it. And what's the biggest change? They never compared my children to my sister's children again because they knew if they did, it would be their final time seeing her. I had placed them in their place, and for the first time, they realized it. I'd won. I suspected my wife was planning a divorce, so I moved my assets. 2 weeks later, she filed, then backtracked when her plan backfired. Hello everyone, before we start today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. Hello people. I've been skimming through the posts here for a while, believing I'd never have my own tale to tell. However, life has a way of shocking you, and I've been lugging this about for months. I need to let it out. Let me be clear, I've never been the sort to jump to conclusions or assume the worst. My wife, let's call her M, and I have been together for 6 years and married for 4. Things were solid, or so I thought. We experienced the typical ups and downs, but nothing that made me think, oh, there's a problem here. In reality, throughout the majority of our relationship, we were that couple, completely committed colleagues. We laughed at stupid inside jokes, argued for hours about which movie to watch, and had a cadence that just worked. She'd organize elaborate date nights, and I'd treat her to her favorite takeout after a long day. It felt effortless. As if we had figured out the whole love thing. That is why what occurred next struck me like a ton of bricks. The shift around 6 months ago, things began to alter. At first, it was minor details. Things you'd likely miss if you weren't paying attention. She began carrying her phone everywhere, even when she was only going to the kitchen or folding clothes. Before this, her phone would sit on the coffee table for hours, and she didn't mind who picked it up. One day I made this joke. "What, are you running some secret spy ring now?" She chuckled and added, "No, work's been emailing me a lot." Okay, fine. But, a few days later, she created a password. That one caught me off surprise because she had never used it before. When I casually inquired why, she responded something vague about security and hackers. I didn't press it since I didn't want to appear paranoid, but it simply felt off. And it did not end there. She began taking calls outside the room, which she had never done before. It wasn't subtle either. Her phone would ring, and she'd say, "Oh, let me just grab this real quick," before disappearing into the bedroom or outside on the porch. If I inquired who it was, she would just say, "Just a friend from work." Then I noticed a new habit. Keeping her phone face down on the table. I had no idea that was a thing until I reached over to give her something and she hastily moved her phone out of the way. It was one of those blink and you miss it moments, yet it stayed with me. Growing distance. However, it wasn't all about the phone. She started to feel distant. Conversations that used to flow easily now felt like pulling teeth. If I brought up future plans, such as where should we go for our anniversary? Or, do you think we should start saving for a new car? She'd simply nod and say, "Yeah, we'll see," before shifting the subject. It all came together for me on a random Wednesday. She informed me that she was seeing a buddy for coffee after work. It didn't sound strange, she does that occasionally. I happened to be running errands in the same area, so I figured, why not surprise her? It will be cute. When I arrived, however, she was not with her friend. She stood outside the cafe, walking back and forth, her phone placed against her ear. I remained in my car because something about the way she spoke seemed serious. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but I overheard phrases like, "It's almost ready," and "starting fresh soon." My stomach sank. I couldn't figure out what she was saying, but it didn't sound like job or friend conflict. It sounded grander, like something she had planned. When she returned home, I asked her how her coffee date went, attempting to maintain a casual tone. She told me a complete narrative about her pal complaining about her boyfriend. It was such an unexpected comment that I just gazed at her for a second. "What do you mean?" I inquired. She shrugged. "I just think we should have everything in one place. You know, like all our account info, passwords, documents, that kind of thing, just in case of emergency." I wasn't sure what to say. This was something we'd never discussed before, and the timing seemed strange given everything else I'd noticed. "What kind of emergencies?" I inquired, attempting to keep my tone casual. She shrugged again. "It's just smart, isn't it? What if something happens to one of us? Or what if we need to make a big financial decision quickly?" Her argument made sense on the surface, but something about the way she expressed it made me nervous. It was too rehearsed and polished, as if she had been waiting for the appropriate time to bring it up. I nodded and murmured something like, "Yeah, I guess that's a good idea," but within, alarms were ringing. Why now? Why are we suddenly concerned about arranging our finances when we've always kept them separate and loose? That night, my mind kept reliving her words, attempting to figure out what it meant. Was this just typical adult behavior, and was I reading too much into it? But then I remembered the phone calls, the talk I overheard in the cafe, and how distant she'd been recently. It all began to mount up, and I did not like the image it was painting. Until then, I had done nothing about it. A few days later, she mentioned it again. We were in the kitchen. I was making a sandwich, and she was looking through her phone, when she remarked, "Have you thought more about organizing the bank stuff? Like, do you know where all the account details are?" I lowered the knife and turned to face her. "Okay, what's going on?" I inquired, attempting to keep my tone light but firm. "You've been bringing up the finances a lot lately. Is there something we need to talk about?" She finally looked up from her phone, astonished that I had pressed her on it. "No, nothing's wrong," she responded hastily, making me giggle. "I just think it's important, that's all, you know, for emergencies." "Emergencies? Like what?" She shrugged, her expression unreadable. "I don't know. Just life stuff. It's not a big deal. I promise, I just think it's something we should get on top of." Her response seemed ambiguous. Too vague. I nodded and let it go, but the way she avoided providing a direct answer made me even more suspicious. It didn't seem like a casual suggestion anymore. It felt like she was concealing something, but I had no idea what it was. So, the next day, while she was at work, I decided to look into our finances. I opened our joint account online and discovered something unexpected. Over the last month, a few tiny moves had taken place. Nothing large, but small quantities that did not appear to have a clear purpose. They were not designated for bills, groceries, or anything similar. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it appeared that she had been withdrawing money from the account for some reason, which I couldn't figure out. I considered addressing her, but something told me to wait. If I was wrong, I'd look ridiculous. And if I was correct, I had to be careful. It was eating at me, so I contacted someone I trusted, an old college friend who also happens to be a lawyer. I told him what I'd discovered while trying not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. "Look," he remarked after I'd explained everything. "I'm not saying something is absolutely going on, but you're not insane for wanting to be ready. If you're concerned about protecting your assets, now is the moment to do so. Better safe than sorry." He walked me through what I could do, simple procedures to ensure my finances were protected if something happened. I'll admit that taking such drastic action felt out of the ordinary. It felt like I was preparing for something dreadful even though I wasn't sure what was wrong. But the more I considered it, the more it made sense. If she was really up to something, and I was beginning to suspect she was, I needed to defend myself. It was not an easy decision to make, however. This wasn't just about money or assets. It was about the life we had created together. I kept repeating images in my head, our wedding day, the late-night conversations about our dreams, and the weird little jokes we shared. How did we arrive here? Is this what our marriage had come to? The prospect of taking these measures felt like conceding defeat, as if I was officially abandoning the trust we previously shared. That evening, while she was out, I sat at my desk and took out my laptop. My hands shook as I opened the computer and began browsing through everything: bank accounts, investment accounts, and the property deed. Each paper I studied felt like a betrayal, but a persistent voice in my head reminded me that this was about survival, not sabotage. I didn't mean to hurt her. I couldn't get rid of the idea that if I didn't act now, I'd regret it later. I compiled a list of everything I could transfer and how to do it without raising suspicion. As I typed, I felt a crushing weight settle against my chest. I had entirely trusted her for years, and now here I was, playing defense against the person I thought would always have my back. Then I called my mother and explained why I needed her help, but not in detail. I need you to hold on to some things for me for a while. It's nothing bad, just something I need to do to protect myself, just in case. She was silent for a minute, likely trying to figure out what I wasn't saying. Are you okay? Her voice was filled with anxiety. Yeah, I lied. It's just a precaution. Nothing to worry about. She didn't press me, but I could hear the pause in her voice when she responded. Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need. I hung up the phone with an odd mix of relief and shame. I despised engaging her in this mess, but knowing she had my back provided some steadiness in an otherwise chaotic environment. By the time Em arrived home, I had already begun the process. I moved the majority of my assets, our cash, investments, and even the house, to my mother's name. I kept enough in our joint account to keep up appearances, but the rest was locked down. She didn't notice anything. She walked in, kissed my cheek, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I appeared okay, but inside I was a wreck. Part of me felt awful, as if I had betrayed her trust. But another part of me felt relieved, as if I was finally gaining control of a situation that had spiraled out of my control. Over the next 3 days, I tried to maintain a normal routine. I didn't want to let her know that anything had changed. She appeared satisfied, even unusually cheery at times. However, rather than putting me at ease, it increased my suspicion. If she was plotting something, she did an excellent job of concealing it. What stood out, however, was that she never brought up the finances again, not even after I questioned her the last time. It was as if the subject had evaporated from her memory. At first, I believed I had overreacted, and she dismissed the subject since it wasn't relevant. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was avoiding it. Almost as if she was afraid to bring it up again after I pressed her. I noticed her staring at me a few times, as if she was assessing my mood or contemplating whether to say something. Every time I noticed, she'd quickly return her attention to whatever she was doing, her phone, the TV, a book. It was slight, but it was present. It felt like she was waiting for me to bring it up, as if she didn't want to push the issue again. The silence only made me feel more anxious. It wasn't like her to drop anything she considered essential, and the way she avoided it suddenly appeared deliberate. If she was testing the waters, she was not going in. If she was waiting for something, I was not about to give her the go-ahead. Whatever her next move was, I knew I had to be one step ahead. Something was coming, but I didn't know when or how. All I could do was prepare. That night, I made certain that everything was solid. I glanced over the paperwork again, double-checking every aspect of my mother's asset transfers. The house, the savings, the investments, everything was now legally in her name, sealed in an uncontested trust. I even called her to confirm that she had all of the necessary papers. 2 weeks had passed, and everything appeared normal, frankly. She was acting more loving, even starting to talk about unrelated topics like jobs or what we should eat for the evening. It threw me off because she'd been aloof for months, avoiding anything more than superficial conversations. Part of me began to question whether I had been overreacting all along. Maybe the strange conduct was merely stress or something I didn't comprehend. But then, one random Friday night, she sat me down on the couch, turned off the television, and said, "We need to talk." My stomach fell quickly. I knew what she was going to say before she did. "I think we should get a divorce," she replied, her voice so calm it seemed prepared. It wasn't furious or emotional, it was simply frigid, as if she had told me we had run out of milk. I stared at her, unsure how to respond as she explained her argument. She mentioned needing space, wanting to figure herself out, and feeling like she'd lost her identity in the marriage, standard breakup phrases that didn't really explain anything. But then she said something that struck a different tone. "You know, I've made a lot of sacrifices for you over the years, and I don't think you really appreciate them. I deserve more." That last part stung. It wasn't just that she wanted out, it was that she framed it as if I owed her something, that everything was my fault, and she was simply claiming what was properly hers. As I sat there, trying to understand what she was saying, a new question arose. Why now? Then she said something that made everything start to make sense. "A friend of mine has been helping me see things more clearly," she continued, not looking at me. "A friend." I remained still, letting her speak, but my mind was racing. Who was this friend? Why were they so involved in my marriage? The way she stated it was not casual. It seemed like someone had been hyping her up, convincing her that leaving me wasn't simply a choice, but a strategy she needed to implement. And the more she talked about how she deserved more because of her sacrifices, the more I became skeptical. Sacrifices? What kind of sacrifice? She was happy with me, or so she said. I worked hard to offer her the life she desired, and it wasn't just about money. When she asked to move closer to her job, I agreed, even though it meant a lengthier commute for me. When she wanted to attend that pricey yoga retreat last year, I made sure we budgeted for it, even foregoing a vacation I was looking forward to so she could go. I backed her when she changed careers twice, telling her it was fine to take the risk because I wanted her happy. I believed being a decent husband meant putting her first whenever possible. And it wasn't as if I was an unresponsive, distant partner. I showed up. I remembered birthdays and random things she had mentioned loving. When she mentioned feeling caught in a rut, I suggested date nights. I listened to her complain about her job, friends, and family. I didn't always get it right, but I did try. That's why her "I deserve more" line hurt so much. I didn't even consider buying it. She was not upset due to anything I did or did not do. She was upset because something had changed in her. Perhaps it was the acquaintance she kept bringing up, or something else. But the lady sitting in front of me was not the woman I married, and I was not going to let her rewrite our marriage tale to fit her new narrative. I didn't press her at the moment. Instead, I nodded and said something innocuous, such as, "If that's how you feel, I guess we should figure out the next steps." She seemed startled that I wasn't arguing or begging her to stay, but I didn't mind. My attention had already changed. I needed to know who or what was causing her sudden, planned shift in conduct. She didn't just wake up one day and decide she wanted out. This was something greater, and I wasn't going to let it surprise me any more than it had already. After that chat, she went into her own apartment, and I received the divorce papers on Monday. Let me tell you, they didn't only want to stop the relationship. They were planning to take everything, half the house, my savings, my assets, and the car. She wanted it all. Plus, some ambiguous spousal support clauses that made little sense given her high salary. It seemed as if she was expecting me to give her all I had worked for. At first, I assumed she was just being vengeful, but the way she articulated her demands, so specific and aggressive, reassured me that she had someone guiding her through this. So I started digging. I couldn't just ask her who she'd been talking to, so I had to be clever. I began with her social media. She hadn't blocked me, and even though she didn't post frequently, I searched through her tagged photographs and comments looking for someone new. That's when I discovered the pattern. Jake repeatedly liked and commented on her posts. Nothing obscene, but enough to make me pause. I clicked on his profile, which was public. At first glance, he didn't appear to be much more than a 30-year-old marketing professional. But as I scrolled down, I spotted something unusual. He posted a photo at the same cafe I'd seen her at weeks before, on the same day I overheard her discussing starting afresh. My gut churned as I continued scrolling. More subtle signals were a comment on one of her pictures that read, "You've got this," as well as a selfie he'd taken from what appeared to be her new residence. None of it was substantial evidence, but it was enough to raise my suspicion. I wasn't sure what to do with this information, but I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait for solutions to come my way. Her statement of a friend who helped her get through things remained with me, and I wanted to know who it was. I decided to contact one of our mutual acquaintances, Lisa. She and my wife had been friends for years, so she knew what was going on. I kept the conversation light at first, asking if she'd lately spoken with my wife or if anything seemed strange. Lisa reacted swiftly, saying she had no idea about the friend or any suggestions. I asked a few more probing questions, but she cut the conversation off defensively, claiming she couldn't help me. The entire situation felt rushed, as if she was trying to avoid becoming engaged. Not willing to give up, I called another buddy, Emily. I followed the same pattern, stating that I was simply trying to make sense of things. She was apprehensive at first, responding vaguely to my questions. When I pressed her more, she quickly ended the call, leaving me even more skeptical than before. I sat there, frustrated, trying to figure out my next move. Then, to my astonishment, Emily called back. She told me she needed to make sure what she said didn't come back to her. I assured it wouldn't, and after a long pause, she revealed what she knew. Apparently, my wife had been spending a lot of time with someone named Jake, whom she had met at work. Emily claimed she didn't know much else, but from what she'd heard, Jake was very active in the divorce advice my wife was receiving. Hearing that name felt like a puzzle piece fitting into place. It was evident that this was more than just her need for space or to find herself. Someone else was in the picture, directing her decisions, and I was eager to discover why. I choose to confront it in my own manner. That Saturday, I headed to her apartment building and parked a block away, trying to confirm what I already suspected. A few hours later, she and Jake stepped out of the building. They did not hold hands or anything, but the way they walked together, close, leaning in to talk, was plenty. They got into his car and drove away, leaving me sitting there, staring at the spot where they had been. I did not follow them. I did not need to. At that point, it was evident she hadn't simply stopped loving me. She'd been preparing to go with someone else, and now everything made sense. The unexpected distancing, the money questions, the forceful demands, and the divorce papers. She wasn't simply abandoning me, she was leaving me with nothing, and she was accompanied by someone at all times. I went home that night, my head racing with everything I'd learned. The betrayal burned, but what hurt the most was how premeditated everything was. She was using the divorce as a stepping stone to whatever life she was creating with Jake. But she had no idea what I had planned for her. The first mediation session felt strained from the time we stepped in. Her lawyer arrived with a binder so thick that it appeared they were bringing a case against a Fortune 500 firm. He began listing her demands as if they were entirely reasonable: half the house, the money, my assets, the car, and even some gibberish about spousal support. I remained silent, seeming to listen, but I was waiting for my attorney to make his move. When it was finally our turn, he handed a stack of paperwork across the table and said, "Before we proceed, I think it's important for everyone to review these." Her lawyer took the papers and skimmed through them. His confident posture changed fast as he flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing harder with each one. "What is this?" he inquired, gazing at my lawyer. "These documents show the transfer of all major assets into a trust under my client's mother's name," my lawyer said calmly. "The transfers were completed several weeks before the divorce filing, and the trust is fully legal and irrevocable." The room became utterly silent. Her lawyer looked at her, confused and frustrated. "You didn't mention this," he stated flatly. She snatched the papers from his hands and flipped through them, her face flushing. "This can't be real," she said, staring at the notarized signatures and dates. Then she turned to me, her countenance changing from incredulity to rage. "You planned this?" she muttered, gazing at me as if I'd committed a heinous crime. "You knew I was going to file, and you set this up to screw me over." I did not respond. I just sat there and let her connect the dots on her own. Her lawyer, apparently agitated, requested my counsel to elaborate. So he did, slowly, deliberately, and with every piece of evidence necessary to make the transfers irrefutable. The dates aligned exactly, indicating that I had transferred everything well before she filed. The signatures were duly notarized, and the confidence was solid. There was nothing they could do to challenge it. She was furious. "You're unbelievable," she said, leaning forward in her chair. "I can't believe you'd do something like this to me." I still did not say anything. What was there to say? This was not about me doing anything to her. This was to defend myself because she had made it apparent she was not going quietly. The conference finished with her lawyer saying something about needing to rethink their strategy, but everyone in the room knew they had no further moves to make. When we walked out of the building, she took me aside in the hallway, her expression a mix of rage and desperation. "This isn't over," she added, her tone low. "You're going to regret this." I just looked at her and said, "I already regret trusting you. That's the only regret I have." Things escalated faster than I had anticipated following the mediation session. She went into complete meltdown mode almost instantly. It began with the calls, endless calls. At first, she appeared calm, even remorseful, leaving voicemails that began, "I think we just need to talk," or "I know this got messy, but we can fix it." When I did not answer, the tone changed. By the second day, her messages alternated between sobbing and screaming. One voicemail would be her lamenting about making a mistake and not wanting to lose what we had created together. Then she'd launch into a furious tirade accusing me of being stingy and cruel, blaming me for everything that was wrong in her life. I ignored it all. My lawyer told me not to engage, and I honestly did not want to. I was finished playing her games, but she was not. When the calls and texts did not work, she began telling stories. Mutual friends informed me that she had been telling people that the divorce was a hoax, and that it was all part of a larger farce. A prank? I mean, who would believe that? The flaws in her story quickly became apparent. Friends began to ask questions like, if it was a prank, why did you file actual legal paperwork? Or, why hire a lawyer and make such specific demands if it wasn't serious? When others didn't instantly accept the hoax justification, she doubled down. She said it was not a joke, but rather a test of our relationship's strength. She began casting herself as the victim, claiming that my reaction had hurt and betrayed her, that I had gone too far and broken our marriage's trust. At first, some individuals seemed to believe her stories. I'd get strange emails or comments from acquaintances like, "Wow, I didn't realize things were so rough for her." Even her brother lashed out, saying, "You should have just talked it out instead of being so drastic." It was annoying, but I knew the truth would eventually come out. And it did, due to a common buddy. Let us call him Matt. Matt and I were not particularly close, but we had always been nice. A few weeks after the mediation, he messaged me unexpectedly, stating he had something I needed to see. When we met, he brought out his phone and showed me a series of text messages between her and Jake. I was confused at first. "How did you even get these?" I inquired, scanning through the messages. Matt revealed that he and Jake shared a mutual buddy, who had heard their talks. Apparently, this common acquaintance had grown concerned about the way things were going, especially when Jake began gloating about how he was assisting her in securing her future. It didn't take long for that common buddy to figure out what securing her future really meant, trying to bleed me dry. Feeling awful about remaining silent, the buddy grabbed screenshots of the texts and sent them to Matt, believing he had a better relationship with me and could warn me. "This guy's been playing both sides," Matt replied, shaking his head. "He's been hyping her up to take you for everything while making her believe he'd be there for her afterward." Matt gave me the texts and said, "I thought you should know. You don't deserve this, man." The texts were terrible. She wasn't just ranting to Jake about the divorce. She was actively planning her future steps with him, and he was guiding her through them. A message she left read, "Once the settlement's done, we'll have everything we need. I just need him to agree to the terms." Jake responded, "Don't back down. Make him feel guilty if you have to. He owes you. We'll start fresh once you've got the money." I sat there, staring at Matt's phone and trying to understand what I was reading. This was neither a misunderstanding or an emotional response to a failed marriage. This was a cold, deliberate manipulation. I thanked Matt and he left, but my thoughts were racing. Everything made sense now: her abrupt isolation, her fixation with our finances, and her harsh demands throughout the divorce. It was all part of a plan, one she had been developing with Jake behind the scenes. The text soon circulated among our mutual friends. Matt shared them with a few friends, and they quickly spread. Her story suddenly ceased to be credible. People who had previously been indifferent or even supportive of her began to distance themselves, and the change was nearly immediate. People who had previously defended her or remained neutral suddenly recognized her for who she truly was. Even her closest allies started to distance themselves. By the time the divorce was finalized, she had only her personal things. Her lawyer quietly dismissed her complaint after recognizing there was no legal basis to stand on. All of those bold requests had crumbled under the weight of the documents I had produced, and the trust I had established with my mother was unbreakable. Jake seemed to vanish as soon as things began to unravel. I wouldn't be surprised if he used her as much as she did me. From what I could tell, he'd been feeding her fantasies of independence and a new beginning, but the moment it became evident she wasn't going away with anything, he was gone. Without Jake in her corner, her confidence plummeted. The calls and texts continued, but they became increasingly desperate. She was not accusing me anymore. She begged. "Can we just talk, please? I'll do anything to fix this." One voicemail stated. A different opinion. "You don't have to forgive me, but can't we just settle this and move on? I'll drop everything if you just talk to me." I did not respond. I could not. It was too late to reverse the harm. Even her family began to drift away. Her brother contacted me at one time, apologizing for some of the things he had said before when he believed her side of the story. "I didn't know what she was doing to you," he said. "I'm sorry I ever took her word for it. As for me, I received the house, my savings, and something I hadn't experienced in a long time: peace of mind." My mother, as usual, was my rock. She arrived with buckets of paint and a list of suggestions to help me reclaim the area as mine. Now, life feels like it's mine again. No more second-guessing every small interaction. No longer feeling betrayed. Just peace. She is a chapter from my history that I no longer read. And the remainder of the story is entirely up to me to write. My parents funded my sister's lavish wedding, then handed me the bill. They never expected what I'd do next. I, 32M, was my parents' first kid. They own a healthcare firm and were both highly involved, so I was effectively parentless throughout my youth. I had few intimate moments with them and was always in the care of my nannies. My parents, still in their prime, opted not to bear the responsibility of parenting. They lived a luxury lifestyle, frequently spending over their means, but because they each had sizable inheritances as a safety net, they always landed securely, despite their spendthrift tendencies. My parents had a daughter, Emma, 8 years after my birth. With Emma's arrival, I realized that their neglect of me was not due to their busy lifestyle, but because they just did not like me enough to spend time with me. Over the years, I discovered numerous causes for this treatment. I was a normal-looking child with average intelligence, an introvert who only spoke when spoken to. Emma, on the other hand, was just what my parents needed to position themselves as a perfect family, in their professional circles. She was a stunning baby with blue eyes and curly golden hair. She had inherited my parents' greatest qualities, and even as a youngster, she could fascinate a small crowd with her antics. Her presence solidified the perfect family picture that my parents desired to project. Emma had special treatment, but this did not imply that I had a difficult existence. I was fortunate enough to attend an expensive private school and then a prestigious university. However, the male treatment I experienced throughout my upbringing taught me the value of working hard and earning respect. I worked tirelessly in school and university to earn a well-paying position. Once I secured a job, I worked hard to go up the professional ladder as rapidly as possible. Despite maintaining communication with my parents, the wounds of childhood maltreatment never healed. Emma, as the golden child, was never expected by our parents to work hard. She was an ordinary student to begin with, and because our parents indulged her, she constantly failed her studies. She dropped out of high school, but our parents continued to employ her at their business. Even yet, she was absent most days, and when she did show up, she stayed for only a few hours. She had disagreements with all of her coworkers, and they loathed her presence in the office. Friends and family frequently told me about Emma's temper tantrums and the drama that ensued. However, it devastated my heart how my parents kept this from me. During a visit to my parents after I had established my career, I expected to have a serious conversation with Emma on their behalf. I believed a family intervention would benefit her professional life. When I arrived, Emma was nowhere to be found, and my parents made me feel foolish by stating she ran half of their firm. I could tell my parents were gently comparing my accomplishments to Emma's. That's when it hit me. My parents saw me as the child that grew up without their meddling, whereas Emma was the one they reared with their guidance. It would have been a shame for my parents if I had achieved more in life than Emma. At 19, I was already succeeding in university, whilst my sister, who was the same age, was out partying. Nothing changed throughout the years. Emma remained to live with our parents while I grew in my job. My relationship with Emma deteriorated during these years, for reasons I did not fully understand. As her older brother, I attempted to comprehend what she was going through. Everyone except our parents contrasted her life to mine. She was continually told to follow in my footsteps and achieve success, but that was not her goal. These parallels compelled our parents to overcompensate by giving her undeserved advancements in their company and giving in to all of her demands. My sister was growing up without the ability to accept responsibility for anything, which concerned me. However, I had no role in her life to intervene and advise her. My parents had already kicked me out of their lives since I outshone Emma at parties and family gatherings. Emma preferred it this way, so I established my own social group in the city where I lived. 2 years ago, I met my wife, Danielle. Danielle worked in the fashion sector, something I never envisioned myself being involved with. I had the worst fashion sense, and I still don't understand how a woman with such refined taste in fashion fell in love with me. Her presence in my life enhanced how I portrayed myself, improving my confidence. Strangely, the emptiness left by my parents, which had persisted since my early youth, has finally been filled. Danielle's presence in my life allowed me to discover aspects of my personality that I was previously unaware of. So it's not an exaggeration to state that she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. After a year of dating, Danielle and I decided to marry. Because we both had a limited circle of close friends and family, we chose to have a lavish ceremony. We planned a destination wedding and, after much study, debate, and discussion, chose Venice as our site. I won't go into detail about the wedding, but we paid for all of our invited guests' travel fees and hosted them in the best possible hotels. Most of our guests had never experienced a ceremony like this before. Emma urged me to purchase a ticket for her boyfriend as well, which I joyfully agreed to, despite Danielle's advice to hesitate. Throughout the wedding, I detected jealousy in Emma's eyes. She was frequently consoled by our mother. My parents were in awe of the wedding I had planned, but they kept their joy to themselves. Even before the wedding, my family had ignored my attempts to arrange a family dinner with Danielle. They maintained this conduct even after the wedding. After a while, I gave up trying. Around the same time, I realized that my parents were bad-mouthing me to those around them. They informed others that I had taken their money to finish my studies and find a career, just to abandon them in their old age. My father even stated that he would not leave me a dime of his fortune. My aunt on my father's side, who has always supported me, was nice enough to warn me about what was going on at home. It would be a lie to claim that it did not hurt me. Losing a family member is a difficult experience, and Danielle helped me get through it. I learned a few months back that my sister was arranging her wedding. My aunt told me that Emma was blown away by my wedding and wanted something similar for herself. She even convinced her fiancé to propose to her and began organizing a lavish wedding in Tuscany. However, neither she nor her lover had any money. So she approached our parents and requested them to pay for her wedding. To no one's surprise, they cheerfully approved her request. However, they could not afford a wedding in Tuscany. So they requested her to change the location to Hawaii. After considerable opposition, my sister gave in and planned an elaborate wedding there. Throughout the preparation process, neither my parents nor my sister wanted to involve me in any way. I even met them once during this time, but they kept quiet about the wedding plans. So I accepted the fact that I wouldn't be invited to my sister's wedding. My parents surprised me a few weeks ago when they invited Danielle and me to supper at their house. This was the first time they had asked Danielle around, so my unsophisticated mind assumed this was the first step toward repairing my connection with them. The dinner was good, but afterward, my folks dropped a bombshell. They informed me that they had incurred significant business losses and that an anticipated litigation loomed over their heads like the sword of Damocles. They could no longer afford my sister's wedding. They also couldn't let their golden child down. So they invited me over to see if I could help fund the expense of her wedding. The dinner was not an attempt to reconcile our differences. Rather, it was an opportunity for them to utilize me to make their favorite child happy. I was enraged on the inside, but without asking Danielle, I accepted their offer. However, I had two conditions. First and foremost, I wanted complete control over the wedding style. Second, I wanted to give a speech at the wedding. They were startled because I wasn't normally the one to offer speeches. They didn't care as long as I helped them maintain the prestige of their favored child. Emma's wedding was far more crowded than my own. In addition to her acquaintances, family members from both sides of our parents' families were invited. This was an excellent opportunity to express myself, which is why I insisted on giving a speech. The wedding day eventually arrived, and I could tell Emma was unsatisfied with the arrangements I had made. We had extremely different interests, and I knew that whatever I selected, she would find a way to perceive it as a bad decision. But I was there for one reason: to deliver my speech. When the time came, I asked Danielle to videotape it. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, "I want to take a moment to thank my parents for giving me the opportunity to speak today." My parents exchanged confused looks. They had expected me to speak about Emma, not them. "You see, for years, my parents have ignored me," I went on. "They never supported me or treated me with the same love and affection that they did my sister. But now that they need anything from me, they creep back." As my remarks took effect, the room fell silent. My parents looked uncomfortable, and Emma appeared to be about to cry. "But I'm not bitter," I added, smiling. "In fact, I am grateful. You see, this wedding has given me the opportunity to demonstrate to my parents my success and accomplishments, and I must admit, it feels quite wonderful." I went on to give a speech about how my parents treated me differently and how, despite all of my successes and accomplishments, it still hurts me. My parents sat quietly, their faces flushed with embarrassment. As I finished my speech, I approached my sister and hugged her. "I'm so happy for you," I said truly. "I hope you have a wonderful life with your husband." And with that, I left the reception with my wife, leaving my parents and sister behind. I drove back to my hotel room and sat here, satisfied. My parents have always portrayed themselves as the ideal parents, and this is a significant part of their reputation in our town. I'm glad I finally had the chance to tell everyone how I was genuinely handled. However, I feel a little awful about doing it during my sister's wedding. Am I the a-hole for destroying my sister's wedding day by giving a speech on my parents' carelessness since childhood? Update 1. Emma entered my room shortly before midnight and hugged me tightly. She was crying, and I sobbed with her. Danielle moved out of the room to provide us some solitude. Emma told me she had never heard my side of the tale. She had always assumed that I remained aloof from my family because I desired to be. Our parents had made sarcastic remarks about me to her since she was a child, creating a terrible image of me in her mind. I apologize for ruining her wedding day. To my amazement, she was incredibly understanding, even saying that our parents deserved it. This is the most heartfelt talk I've had with my sister since she was born. Update 2. 1 week has passed. I had not met my father or mother before leaving Hawaii, but my mother called me today. She informed me that Emma had ceased speaking to my father. My speech made a significant impression on her, but my father viewed it confrontational and disrespectful. He chose to cut all relations with me. Emma ceased talking to him after she discovered the truth. My mother begged me to act in some way because the situation was causing her distress. Update 3: Yesterday I did something inconceivable. I invited all of the family members to supper and let them discuss their differences. After feeling orphaned and lost for the previous 32 years, I suddenly feel like I'm leading a family. During supper, I discussed my differences with my dad. Though he was too stubborn to accept his shortcomings, I knew he recognized that he had not been a good parent to me. My mother apologized for not being present for me as a mother. I did not turn out badly, so there was no reason not to forgive her. By the end of the evening, I had ensured that the conflicts between my sister and my father were settled. It is odd to be involved in family matters, but my only concern is whether this will continue or not. Comment: Ash, your family is a bunch of rich a-holes who have been making money for generations and have no idea what to do with it. What's wrong with being raised by nannies when kids are abandoned on the streets? You were loved and cared for as a youngster, which is why you grew up to be successful and can now afford 2 expensive weddings consecutively. NTA, but you might have done this sooner rather than being a doormat for so many years, hoping your family would learn from their mistakes and begin loving you properly. You should also learn to communicate more effectively rather than waiting until the last minute to explode. My wife sold the family heirloom engagement ring to buy luxury items, even though she knew how important it was to me. My soon-to-be ex-wife, Leah, 26F, and I, 28M, had been married for 6 months after dating for 2 years. I spoke with a lawyer a few days ago and filed for divorce because she sold the wedding ring I proposed to her with. It was a rather expensive ring with a platinum band set with diamonds, and it had been in my family for 3 generations. It was a major deal to me, and she understood I wanted to keep it in the family as an heirloom. I asked her about her lost ring last week. She casually informed me that she had sold it to fund a few luxury goods because the ring was outdated and not her style. She spent the money on fancy purses and jewelry. She acted as if it was no big issue when she told me about it, but I immediately freaked out because my mother and grandmother are still alive and would be quite unhappy if they found out. I told her she needed to return everything and buy the ring back since it was supposed to stay in the family. She was aware of this, and I couldn't comprehend how she could have made such a big error. But she explained that it was not a mistake. She had done it on purpose. She knew I'd lose my head, so she prepared her defense. Apparently, she had disliked the ring from the day I proposed but had not said anything because it belonged to our family. However, now that we were married, she claimed it was technically hers, and she could do whatever she wanted with it. That was her rationale, and she believed it was sound logic. We had a huge quarrel, screaming at each other like never before. I assured her I was willing to do whatever it took to get the ring back. She informed me that she was not returning anything and that if I wanted the ring back, I would have to buy it back from the buyer myself. I was so unhappy that I packed a tiny bag and drove to a suburban hotel, where I'm currently staying. She didn't try to stop me, and she didn't even look up as I left. Since then, she has not attempted to contact me. I waited 2 days for her to get back to me. When she didn't respond, I contacted my pals, who recommended a decent divorce attorney. On the 3rd day, after consulting with the lawyer, I blocked her everywhere. Yesterday, I signed the divorce papers and returned home throughout the day. I skipped work so I could go home when she wasn't around. I went inside, placed the divorce papers on the coffee table, and began sorting through my belongings. Fortunately, a few friends were willing to help me. They assisted in carrying the heavier and larger items, which are being stored at their homes until I find another place to live. By the time I finished, everything that belonged to me had vanished, and there was no sign of me left. Then, I returned to the motel. When Leah returned home from work after 6 p.m., her parents began calling me. They texted me that I couldn't do this, that I should only talk to her once, and that I needed to unblock her because this was petty. They claimed that I could not simply end our marriage over anything like this. I didn't care. I blocked them as well. That's when she dispatched her companions after me. They started calling me unreasonable, petty, and egoistic. Then they told me that shortly after I left, Leah had contacted the jeweler she sold the ring to and was in the process of purchasing it back since she felt awful. But, according to them, I hadn't even given her enough time to repair it, so they started portraying me as the evil guy. Now I think I may have overreacted, and I've been feeling strange since last evening. Am I incorrect to file for divorce since my wife sold the wedding ring that had been in my family for generations? Edit. My family has no idea what is going on right now. I don't want them to worry, so I haven't told them anything. My maternal grandmother is pretty elderly. She was the original owner of the ring when my grandfather proposed to her with it. I don't want to risk giving her a heart attack, which she would undoubtedly have if she discovered that Leah sold the ring. The ring is really important to my family, and I've been chatting with the jeweler Leah sold it to for the past 3 days. She had given me his contact information while we were fighting, telling me that if I really wanted the ring back, I could go buy it myself. However, I have yet to be able to get it back because the jeweler is asking for considerably more than he paid Leah for it. I'm currently negotiating with him. I also asked if Leah was trying to repurchase the ring, and he verified that she was. He told me he'd sell it to whoever had the money first. Meanwhile, if another client offered a higher price than the one he quoted us, he would sell it to them instead. So I need to move quickly because the ring is on display at his store, and he doesn't take reservations. If someone offers greater money, he will sell to them. It's been frustrating dealing with him, but at the end of the day, he's a businessman, so I can't hold it against him. After all, Leah sold him the ring, and he paid a nice price for it. It's all fair game to him. I'm just crossing my fingers that I can get the money together as quickly as possible. Maybe he'll drop the price he's quoted, and I'll be able to buy it back. Only then will I tell my family what's been going on. Otherwise, things will become very messy, and I do not want them to panic. Update 1. It has been 4 days since my first post here. Thank you to everyone who left comments on my post. It was tremendously reassuring to know that I was doing the correct thing after greatly doubting myself. Her pals definitely got inside my thoughts. They went out of their way to make me a villain, but I didn't take it personally. I've blocked all of her friends and family members. I don't want to interact with any of them because of what's happened in the last few days. It's really been playing with my mind. Leah and I have been together for a few years, and I never anticipated this would happen. She's always been a bit materialistic, which I've had to tolerate, but I never expected her to go this far. What threw me off surprise was how she acted as if she had done nothing wrong. It's not as if we haven't fought before, we have, just like every other couple. But this one was different. I saw an entirely different side to her, which is why I chose to get divorced. If she believed she could treat me the same way after only 6 months of marriage, she was mistaken. She can't walk all over me and expect me to stay. The ring may seem insignificant to some, but it means a lot to me and my family. It is not as if she was unaware of this. I indicated in my initial post that she was well aware that I intended to keep the ring as a family treasure. You don't just sell a family heirloom and then pretend everything is good because, legally, you now own it. I wish I could convey all of this to her family and friends, who are so determined to portray me as the evil person, but, frankly, I don't think it's worth the hassle. Leah hasn't even tried to contact me, which is unusual given how desperate she is. I know she has a burner account on social media, which I haven't disabled, but she hasn't sent me any messages from it. So I guess she isn't really trying to get back to me. Instead, she's trying to make me feel horrible about filing for divorce. At least that's how it appears right now. Regarding the ring, I've contacted the jeweler. He informed me that Leah had not responded to his messages in the past 2 days. Maybe she has backed off? I'm not sure what's going on with her. But I told him I was happy to buy the ring back at the price he was offering because, at this point, I am just anxious to have it back, no matter what. He agreed, and I'm going to his store tomorrow to send him a check and get my ring returned. Once I have it, I'll finally tell my family about what's been going on with me and Leah, since I believe it's time. They still have no idea, and my mother has been questioning why neither of us has been home and why Leah has not returned her calls. I wasn't aware that Leah had also moved out. I guess she's staying with her parents or friends, it does not matter. But I guess this is finally over, because moving out of the house appears to be the final step. I anticipate to hear from her lawyer within the next several days, and then we can proceed with the divorce. I have a gut sense she will not contest it, and I sincerely hope she does not. I believe I was fair in my divorce settlement, so she shouldn't feel the need to ask for anything further. I will find out soon enough. For the time being, I'm simply hoping that everything goes well for me. I've already spent a lot of money to get the ring back. I don't want to spend another amount on a lawyer to battle a long, drawn-out divorce. I just hope everything goes smoothly from now on. Update 2. I eventually went to the jeweler's store today, paid him, and got the ring back. The guy seemed quite interested in my condition. He was quite talkative and had a tendency to gossip. He explained to me that he had never been in a situation like this before and found it fascinating. Then he stated something that truly piqued my interest. Leah had unexpectedly blocked him. That surprised me, given that her friends had insisted she was distraught by our argument and was sincerely attempting to reclaim the ring. But I believe as soon as she saw I wasn't coming back, she gave up. It was all for show after all. She doesn't care about the ring or repairing things. All she cares about is looking like the victim. This only validates what I previously believed, so I'm not surprised. After visiting the jeweler, I decided to speak with my family and remove the band-aid. I was sick of keeping things from them, and now that I had the ring, they wouldn't have to worry about that. I drove to my mother's house, sat my parents down, called my grandmother on FaceTime, and recounted the entire issue to them. Everyone was surprised that Leah had done anything like this. She always came across as a nice person, and no one anticipated her to pull off something like this. My grandmother was relieved that I was able to reclaim the ring, but she also remarked something that resonated with me. It wasn't right that I had to purchase my own ring back. She suggested that during the divorce, I make Leah pay for it. I told her I will think about it, but I know it won't happen. It would simply lead to a long war and countless negotiations, which is the last thing I want. These things can stretch on for months, and I don't have the time or money to continue squandering on lawyers. I didn't say it to my grandmother, but there isn't much I can do in situations like these other than confess defeat. It seems horrible, but it's actually the more practical thing to do. We had no written agreement regarding the ring, so proving anything in court would be tough. Social conventions and family customs are not legally binding. Unless I had the best lawyers in town, pursuing her legally would be worthless. My parents understood this, therefore they did not pursue the matter further. After we ended the FaceTime session with my grandmother, my parents expressed their disappointment with how things turned out with Leah. They had developed a strong liking for her. They have never had an issue with her before. She had always been an excellent daughter-in-law, and when we married, my parents were the happiest they had been. Leah blended right in with our family, like the missing piece of a puzzle. And now, less than a year into our marriage, we were getting divorced. I ended up weeping while they were speaking to me. They had to console me since, up until now, I had not allowed myself to cry or properly express my emotions. But today, I couldn't keep back. Hearing my parents talk about Leah and how unhappy they were about the situation only made me feel worse about all I was going through. And they were correct. We were already divorcing after only a year of marriage. I never envisioned something like this happening just a few months, let alone a few weeks ago. But now it is occurring, and there is little I can do about it. The toughest part is that I know Leah believes she did nothing wrong. That's why she sent her family and friends after me, to guilt-trip me into returning. The whole event with the jeweler was purely for show. She wanted to appear upset, but the truth is that she probably wasn't. She doesn't comprehend how important this was to me. She believes I'm overreacting. And that's the worst part. But after speaking with my parents today, I felt lighter. It felt like a great weight had been lifted off my chest. They told me they were proud of me for sticking up for myself and my family, for refusing to let anyone walk all over me, even if I love that person. That's all the reassurance I need. At the very least, my parents believe I am doing the right thing and am not overreacting. Whatever hurts me, harms me. I can't change that. And if Leah doesn't care that she harmed me, maybe we should end this marriage while we still can. Now I'm just waiting for her response to my divorce filing. I sincerely hope she does not contest anything, because it is the last thing I need right now. She's already brought me enough difficulty, I don't want any more. Update 3. It's been a few days since my last update, and I've been busy. I had missed a few days of work, so I had to make up for lost time, including working overtime. Given my existing circumstances, I couldn't afford to upset my bosses. Instead of relaxing, I spent my free time hunting for an apartment close to my employment. Staying at a hotel was no longer practical. Thankfully, I was able to find a place with a fair rent, and I'll be moving in next week. Naturally, dealing with the practical issues of my life kept me extremely busy, so I didn't have much time to reflect about Leah and everything that had gone wrong. In some ways, it served as a good distraction. But then she called me last evening. It was from an unfamiliar number, so I picked it up intuitively. And when I heard her voice on the other end, I stopped. I wasn't sure whether to stay on the line or hang up. So I just remained silent. She did not apologize. She did not even admit what she had done. Instead, she stated that she wanted to speak with me one final time, despite the fact that she admitted she had no authority to do so. She stated she wanted to meet with me in person to give over the signed divorce papers and have one final talk to clear things up. Even when I didn't react, she simply said she'd be waiting at home in the afternoon. Then she hung up. For the rest of the evening, I was unsure what to do. But this morning, I decided to finally head over. Even if I didn't want to talk to her, I figured it was a good idea to get the divorce papers in person. Part of me was curious about what she needed to clear up with me. So I went home, and by then, the place had mostly been emptied out. Only the furniture remained, but since the house had already been equipped, it was evident that it would stay. We were planning to end the lease at the end of the month anyway. She gave me a check in addition to the papers. I was perplexed, but then I saw the amount. It was quite considerable. She explained that she had returned everything she had purchased with the proceeds from the sale of the ring. She decided that because we were no longer going to be together, it would be best to return the money. It was a few thousand less than what I had paid the jeweler to buy back my ring. I told her, and she said that whatever amount I had to pay, she would pay the balance in payments over the next few months. She could only afford to offer me this right now. I was fine with that because, honestly, I received some of it back, whereas I had anticipated losing whatever I had spent on the ring. It was a little odd, but I thanked her. She finally apologized. She was already in tears, telling me that she had never planned for things to go so wrong. But it was plainly too late to remedy anything, so perhaps it was best if we just let each other go. I didn't know what to reply, so I remained there awkwardly silent as she continued chatting. She informed me she'd been feeling terrible about everything for the past few weeks, ever since I left home. Even though her family and friends supported her, she couldn't believe she had done the right thing or that I had overreacted. Somewhere deep down, she knew I was correct and that she had made a tremendous mistake. She told me that she had wanted to contact me several times before. But since I had already blocked her, she was scared that if she did, I would reject her, which she couldn't bear. So she just stayed away. She also stated that she knew I deserved better, thus she felt it was right for us to divorce. Despite the fact that she was crying, she managed to finish her speech. Then she left without waiting for an answer from me. I was in shock, so I stood in the living room for a few minutes after she departed. Then I sat on the couch, attempting to make sense of everything. I started crying about a half hour after hearing her car pull away. Then I finally left and returned to the motel. I am going to the bank tomorrow to cash the check. I've already spoken with my lawyer about the papers, and since there's nothing else to discuss, we'll just have to wait for the waiting time to end. Then we will be officially divorced. I expected this to feel much better than it does now. But I suppose with time, I'll move on. For the time being, however, it hurts. And I'm going to let it hurt because there isn't much else I can do. Update 4. I cashed the check today at the bank, and for some reason, it felt incredibly liberating. Leah and I haven't spoken in a few days since our last interaction at the house, and I believe I'm finally letting go. Holding on to all of my anger and hurt will do me no good. I just want to forget about that whole situation and get on with my life. I had already moved out of the hotel and into my new apartment. Thanks to my pals, I was able to get everything set up rather quickly. I am so grateful to have such supportive friends. They've been checking in on me as often as they can. I'm also grateful to my parents, who have been there for me emotionally. I don't think I would have been able to deal with this as well as I am now if it hadn't been for them. And it's not as if I don't miss Leah or regret what has occurred. Of course I do. But I can't let it get in the way of my life since the world won't stop for me to digest my emotions. I am still going to have to work. I'll still have to keep up with the bills and everything else. I'll still have to do everything I'm supposed to do. To stay up, I needed the emotional support I've received from everyone, so I'm grateful that I have such a strong support system. In a few weeks, my divorce will be final. After that, I'll be done with the legal matters. I'm thinking about going on a vacation or doing something exciting and unplanned to take my mind off things because I believe I need a change of pace right now. I've spoken with a few pals, and they seem enthused about the prospect of traveling together. Perhaps I will take them up on that. Leah and I are no longer together, as evidenced by her social media post. I don't use social media much, so I didn't post anything or make any announcements, but she did. Many of our mutual acquaintances contacted me. Some simply wanted to assure me that things will improve, while others only wanted to gossip. But at least everyone knows now, so I don't have to explain anything. For that, I am grateful. That being said, I'm looking forward to moving on. Update 5. Hello everyone, my divorce was finalized earlier this week. Leah contacted me again from the same number she had used before to apologize. Instead of remaining mute, I told her that I wish things could have worked out with us, but that is how it is. I wished her only the best for the future. She thanked me and then hung up. And that was all. It hurts, but I suppose this is the closest we'll get to having any form of closure. Now, I'm actively attempting to move forward with my life. As I indicated in my previous update, I'm set to embark on a trip with a couple of my friends in a few days, which I'm very happy about. I've been looking forward to this for weeks, and it's finally happening. It actually feels like I'm beginning a new chapter in my life, which is very thrilling. Of course, I'm not totally done with the chapter I've left behind, but I can't go back. The only way to proceed is forward, and I'm hoping this tour performs its job successfully. That being said, I don't anticipate blogging here anytime soon. So, I'd like to thank everyone who has commented on my posts, supported me, and even reached out to me. It's very wonderful of you. The fact that you are all strangers to me and still care about my situation is extremely amazing, so thank you. I mean it. I had a kidney infection, but my husband lied about being stuck at work, and when I called his coworker, I found out he hadn't even left. I, 28F, have been married to my husband, 32M, for 3 years. We have a 1-year-old daughter together. Up until recently, I thought I could count on him when I truly needed him. But last week, he proved me completely wrong. I had been feeling off for a couple of days, fatigued, nauseous, just generally unwell. Then one morning, I woke up with a fever, chills, and a deep sense that something was really wrong. I was so weak I could barely get out of bed. Taking care of our daughter felt impossible. I called my husband at work and told him I needed him to come home. He promised he would. An hour passed. Then 2. He kept texting me, saying he was just finishing up something, and would leave soon. Then he claimed he was stuck in traffic. Then he said he was on his way but had to stop for gas. At this point, my fever was getting worse, and I was struggling to even sit up without feeling dizzy. I told him it was urgent. He reassured me he was almost there. But something felt off. So I texted one of his coworkers, someone I knew he was close with. The response I got sent a chill down my spine. He hasn't left yet. He's still here. I was furious. And terrified. I immediately called my neighbor, a kind older. She came over right away, helped me get dressed, and drove me to the hospital. Turns out, I had a severe asymptomatic urinary tract infection that had turned into a serious kidney infection. My heart rate was dangerously high, and the doctors told me that if I had waited much longer, I could have gone into septic shock. 2 hours later, while I was lying in that hospital bed, shaking from fever and hooked up to an IV, my husband finally decided to show up. I didn't even want to look at him. He tried to explain, saying he didn't realize it was that bad, and that he was just trying to wrap things up at work. But I can't get over the fact that he lied to me, over and over, while I was at home struggling to stay conscious. If my neighbor hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened to me. I feel so betrayed. If he could ignore me in a life-threatening situation, what does that say about our marriage? About our future? About our daughter's safety if something ever happens again? I don't know what to do. Would you be able to trust your partner after something like this? Comments. Comment 1. Yeah, no. I couldn't do this either. If you had waited for him and gone into septic shock and probably ultimately died, what would he have done then? That could have 100% been prevented if he just came home when you asked. He gives more loyalty to a job that'll just replace him when it's his time over his wife who he chose to love in sickness and health. Comment 2. We're expecting to have our first child in about a month and a half. I, the dad, notified work of the due date and I expected that I'd be scheduled on overlapping shifts so if something happens they won't have to scramble to find coverage. The March schedule just came out and in the last week I'm exclusively scheduled at offsites, on my own, so I can't just drop everything and leave. Really? Yeah, right. Guess who has 2 feet and can leave? I'm not missing the birth of my first child for anything and I'm not gonna be anywhere except wherever boss mama wants me to be. Comment 3. I went through something very similar with a now ex. I tried to get past it but I just knew in my heart after that he wasn't reliable and wouldn't prioritize me even in the most dire of circumstances, and that's a hard thing to move past, even without children. Comment 4. Yup. Me too. Now ex. Put everyone one ahead and even doubted my illness. Not a friend or even a person on your team. This is one of those, when they show you who they are, believe them. Update. 4 days later, I'm feeling better and finally back home after a few days in the hospital. My parents came to pick up my daughter and took care of her while I was away. They live 4 hours away, so I hadn't asked for their help earlier. I didn't really get an apology from him. Just a bunch of excuses. He said he didn't think it was that serious, and I should have just gone to the neighbor if it was really that bad. I didn't argue, not because I agree, but because some of the comments I got made me realize some things. People asked if I'm the type to cry wolf, and that's why he didn't come. In 5 years of being together, I've only ever needed him to take me to the hospital once, when I gave birth to our daughter. He wasn't there when I was sick, and if he had come home, he probably wouldn't have done much anyway if it didn't need a hospital. But then someone asked me what I'd do if it was our daughter in my position, and he acted the same way. That hit me hard. And as dramatic as it sounds, I don't want to be with him anymore. I don't think I can ever trust him again. I've made an appointment with a lawyer, but of course, divorce takes time. I'm looking for an apartment, but the housing shortage is a nightmare. Since I live in a rural area, though, there's still hope. I haven't told him yet. He's acting like nothing's wrong, so I'm doing the same. I even saw comments suggesting that he might not have actually been at work, maybe using it as an excuse for something else. So, one night while he was sleeping, I checked his phone. I didn't find proof he wasn't at work, but I did find messages to women, multiple flirty ones. And a Tinder app. These messages have been going on for months. He was also sending TikToks to his friends while I was sick, laughing and joking around with no real concern for me. He told me his boss refused to give him time off. I found no evidence that he even asked for time off or discussed my condition with anyone. I'm starting to suspect he lied because if he really did ask, it would have been illegal for his boss to deny him leave where I live. At this point, I don't feel like confronting him. I just want out. I ignored the red flags before. The small lies, broken promises, and I shouldn't have. I thought he'd be there for me when it mattered most, but I guess I was naive. I never thought anyone could let me down like this. I'm not telling him I'm leaving until I'm ready. Just like he didn't tell me he wasn't coming. Comments. Comment 1. I'm not really surprised you found what you found. I'm so glad you're okay, and I applaud you for realizing you and your daughter deserve better. You're absolutely correct to not mention anything until the plan is fully in place as you walk out the door. Good luck, everything will be better. Comment 2. Exactly this. OP is handling it smart, no need to give him a heads up. Wishing her and her daughter a smooth transition to a better life. Comment 3. Take screenshots of the app and flirty texts. This is evidence your divorce lawyer can use later. Oopie. Where I am, infidelity doesn't change anything regarding divorce, but I still did it for if he tried to lie to people. I found out that my husband has spent all our savings and hasn't saved anything while I've been covering major expenses. My husband, 26 male, and I, 27 female, have been married for almost 2 years. Tonight, we had the worst fight we've ever had, and I'm seriously considering spending some time apart. We're both hardworking and financially stable, probably considered upper middle or upper class for our age. We paid for our wedding ourselves, and 4 years ago, we bought and renovated our own home. Money has never really been an issue in our relationship until recently. One of the reasons we've done so well is because we've always been diligent about saving. When we were aggressively saving for our wedding and home, we put away 30% of every paycheck. After the wedding, we agreed to a more manageable 20% savings rate to build up our emergency fund and plan for the future, kids, a new house, a new car, etc. I've stuck to that commitment. In fact, when my husband's car died unexpectedly, I covered the full cost of a replacement without needing a car payment. When our HVAC system failed, I paid for that too. Despite these big expenses, I've still managed to keep up my savings and have a solid emergency fund. Tonight, I found out my husband has saved nothing. We've always had a system. His steady paycheck covers our monthly bills, and since I freelance, my income goes toward bigger expenses like student loan payments and unexpected costs. It's worked well, or so I thought. When I asked him why he hasn't saved anything, his excuse was that he's always paying off the credit card, which, for the record, only he uses. I went through our budget, and based on his income, he should have at least $3,000 left over every month after covering expenses. So I asked, where is that money going? He had no answer. So I checked his statements, and what I found was infuriating. Nothing that suggests cheating, gambling, or anything extreme, but reckless, obscene spending. We've had serious conversations about his spending before, and almost a year ago, I made it very clear that he needed to stick to our financial plan. Not only did he break that promise, but he's also somehow spent more than he earns, dipping into our savings. I'm ambitious and goal-driven. I dream big, and we've always talked about our future, where we see ourselves in 5 or 10 years. He's been especially eager to start trying for a baby, and while I've been on the fence, I recently came around to the idea. Until tonight, when I realized we have almost no savings. Now, the timeline for having a child. Delayed. The plan to move out of a town we both hate? Out the window. I feel completely blindsided and betrayed. He's made multiple promises he hasn't kept, and when I confronted him, his solution was to put half of his yearly bonus into savings, even though we already agreed that bonus would go toward paying off his massive student loans. At this point, I don't just feel disappointed, I feel disrespected. I don't understand why he went behind my back like this or why he thought I wouldn't notice. I've lost so much trust in him, and I don't know how to move forward from here. Would time apart help? Can trust even be rebuilt after something like this? I'm at a complete loss. TL, Dr. My husband, 26 million, and I, 27 female, have always prioritized saving for our future, but tonight I discovered he has saved nothing while I've been covering major expenses. He makes enough to save at least $3,000 a month, but instead, he's been recklessly spending and even dipping into our savings. This isn't the first time we've had this issue, and I feel completely betrayed. Our future plans, having a baby, moving, are now on hold. I don't know if I can trust him anymore and am considering time apart. Where do I go from here? Update. I wanted to come back and give an update since a lot of people had strong opinions about this. First off, my husband is not some reckless mooch, and this isn't a case of me supporting him while he blows through money. He actually covers most of our monthly bills, while I handle the bigger but less frequent expenses like quarterly and annual payments. That setup works for us since my income isn't the same every month. He's also an incredibly generous person. He loves picking up the tab for friends, buying gifts just to make people smile, and always putting others first. That generosity is one of the things I love most about him, but when you aren't keeping track, it adds up fast. And for those assuming I don't make real money because I run my own business and do freelance work, this is my first year going full-time instead of working a 9 to 5 and then grinding on my business at night. I wouldn't have had the courage to do that without him, and I never would have made the leap if I didn't have a partner with a steady paycheck, even though my business has been doing really well. That said, I know I failed as a partner too. He wasn't upfront with me when he started struggling to pay off his credit cards, and while he absolutely should have told me, I should have checked in more too. I thought he was spending the way he was because he was still able to while keeping up with our savings. Instead, he was dipping into our savings to cover his credit cards, and instead of telling me, he tried to handle it himself. He knows that's not okay, but I also need to make sure he feels comfortable coming to me before things get to this point again. To clear up a few things. No, he is not trying to trap me with a baby. We both want kids. It's just about timing. No, I am not unemployed. I run a successful business and do freelance work. Just because I don't get paid on a bi-weekly schedule doesn't mean I don't make good money. Yes, small purchases add up fast. Lunches out, spotting friends, video games, gifts for family, random Amazon orders. It all snowballed into $3,000 a month before he even realized what was happening. Moving forward, we agreed to close most of his credit cards, put his full paycheck into our joint account instead of just half so we both have visibility on spending, and stick to a firm budget that still gives him personal spending money. We haven't decided yet if we'll fully merge everything, but we are going to be a lot more open and accountable with each other. At the end of the day, this isn't a deal breaker for me. I love my husband and I know he loves me. We both want this to work, and we are both putting in the effort to make sure it does. Thanks to everyone who gave helpful advice. Hopefully, this is the last time we ever have to have this fight. My brother demanded $50,000 from me for his broken relationship after his fiancée confessed she loved me. My brother Matt, who is 1 year older than me, was engaged to Kate, his ex-fiancée. They seemed like a good match, and it appeared that they would have a wonderful life together. However, things didn't go as planned, and their relationship ended in large part due to me. Before you pass judgment, I need to describe what actually happened. Matt and I have always been close, and we even attended the same college, where Matt met Kate. They struck it off fast and began dating seriously. Kate spent a lot of time with Matt and me in our college apartment. It didn't take long until she and I became pals. Initially, I was pleased to see how much she cared for my brother, and I admired her as his girlfriend. That's how I've always seen her, as Matt's girl, with the potential to join our family eventually. But, over time, I started to notice things about Kate that made me uneasy. She was frequently overly nice with me in ways that did not seem quite acceptable. I dismissed it at first, assuming it was her way of bonding with me as a potential sister-in-law. However, numerous ex-girlfriends of mine would bring up Kate in conversation. They told me how uncomfortable she made them feel when they came to visit me. According to them, Kate would act possessive of me around them, asking a lot of questions, which made no sense given that she was with Matt and not me. I never paid much attention to these statements, supposing they were exaggerated or simply didn't want to believe them. But as more individuals brought it up, I realized there could be something to it. I once dated a girl named Sarah, and everything went well between us. However, she abruptly ended our relationship. I was caught off guard and had no idea what had gone wrong. I eventually discovered the truth. Kate had ruined our relationship. When I brought Sarah over to our apartment, Kate would continuously mock her, put her down, and even bully her behind my back. Sarah later informed me that Kate made her feel unwelcome and insignificant, as if she did not belong in my life. That was not all. Kate went so far as to lie to Sarah, claiming that I was cheating on her with other people. That was completely false, and the worst part was that Sarah believed her without speaking with me first. It ached to know Kate had purposefully wrecked our relationship. When I questioned Kate, she acknowledged lying but showed no remorse. Instead, she excused her actions by claiming that she didn't think Sarah was right for me and was attempting to protect me from a relationship she didn't believe was good enough. She presented it as if she was doing me a favor, but it did not feel that way. It seemed like an invasion, as if she had crossed a line she wasn't supposed to cross. This was not an isolated instance. Another time, I was dating a girl named Emily and things were getting serious. During Christmas, I decided to bring her home for the first time to meet my family. Matt brought Kate along, as he normally did. I had high hopes for the holiday, thinking it would be an opportunity for Emily to connect with everyone. Instead, it became a nightmare. Kate made Emily feel unwelcome from the beginning. She would isolate her from family gatherings, making her feel like an outcast while pretending she didn't notice. Emily later told me that she thought Kate despised her and treated me with jealousy. She followed me about all day, never allowing Emily or myself any space or solitude. Eventually, Emily couldn't handle it any longer, and we split up. These experiences made me feel stuck. I wasn't sure if Kate had feelings for me because she had never expressed them. I also didn't know how to handle this without producing a schism between my brother and me or inciting extra family turmoil. But, at the same time, I couldn't ignore how Kate's actions affected my life and relationships. It was evident that something was wrong, and it was only a matter of time before things broke down. Then came my birthday. Kate handed me a gold chain with the letter K on it. It looked quite pricey. At first, I wasn't sure how to react. Giving me a necklace with her initials on it seemed weird, even inappropriate. This was not the type of gift you'd anticipate from your brother's fiancée. It seemed more like something couples would exchange. I nervously quipped that she must have confused the receiver, as the necklace appeared to be a gift for my brother Matt rather than me. Kate's face flushed with shame, and she explained how she had personalized the necklace particularly for me. She said she wanted me to wear it so I wouldn't get approached by every girl on the street. I made a nasty expression at her comment, and she must have seen it because she fell into tears and fled out of the room without saying anything. The entire situation felt awkward and uncomfortable, and I had no idea what to do. Later, I summoned the confidence to tell my brother about my concerns, hoping he'd understand why Kate's gift had upset me. But, to my amazement, he ignored it completely. He pretended it wasn't a huge deal for Kate to give me anything like that, telling me that Kate loved me like family and I shouldn't overthink things. When I brought up Kate's previous occurrences and strange conduct, my brother replied that she was simply a highly protective person and that her behavior meant nothing else. To avoid unnecessary drama, I decided to drop the topic with him. He was clearly delusional. But, following the incident, I made a concerted attempt to distance myself from Kate. I was nice and respectful whenever I was around her, but I avoided spending time alone with her or conversing with her for longer than necessary. I assumed that providing that distance would help create clear boundaries and that she would finally leave me alone. When my brother and Kate graduated, I expected to spend less time with Kate, but that did not happen. Kate began phoning and texting me practically daily. Even when I ignored her calls and responded briefly to her texts, she didn't seem to receive the message. Her persistence perplexed me, and I couldn't understand why Mom continued to seek so much attention from me when her priority should have been my brother. Then Daisy entered my life. I met her at a party through common friends, and as soon as we started talking, I realized she was unique. Daisy is the love of my life, and I'm so grateful we met. Kate's behavior at family functions followed the same old, unpleasant pattern every time she met Daisy. She would try to bully Daisy in the same manner she had bullied my ex-partners. But this time, something was different. I was older, more self-aware, and far less tolerant of her shenanigans. Whenever Kate crossed a line, I stood up for Daisy and warned her to back off. But I also have to admit that Daisy does not require my protection. She is strong, confident, and refuses to accept disrespect. One event stood out in particular. Kate chose a seafood restaurant for our family meal despite knowing Daisy was terribly sensitive to shellfish. She obviously wants Daisy to sit out, expecting she would feel ostracized and embarrassed. When I discovered what was going on, I absolutely refused to attend the dinner. Daisy did not remain silent either. She informed everyone that Kate had purposefully chosen a place where she would be unable to eat. Kate attempted to play innocent, stating she had no idea Daisy's allergy was such a major deal. When it didn't work, she became rude, insulting Daisy by claiming that only weak people had such allergies and accusing her of faking them for attention. That was the breaking moment. My parents recognized Kate's callous behavior and called her out on it. I also insisted Kate apologize to Daisy on the spot. She seemed outraged at me for siding with Daisy, as if she expected me not to support my own spouse. She whispered an unconvincing apology. In the end, my dad, Daisy, and I went out to another restaurant while Kate and my brother ate at the seafood restaurant. Daisy and I carefully avoided Kate following this incident. Fortunately, my parents were on the same page. They saw Kate's odd conduct and did not pressure me to involve her in my plans. They understood and supported my decisions, making things easier for me. My brother Matt was the only person who remained to support Kate. He would regularly approach me and plead her case. He told me how Kate was hurt that I wasn't spending more time with her, and how Daisy had pushed a wedge between us. He'd reminisce about the good old days, attempting to persuade me to visit him and Kate more often so the three of us could hang out like we used to. But I had no desire to turn back the clock. I made it obvious to Matt that Daisy was a vital part of my life right now, and she was not leaving. I told him that if Kate couldn't accept Daisy or recognize her role in my life, there was no place for me in their small group. I wasn't going to place Kate's sentiments over my partner's well-being, or jeopardize the life I was creating with Daisy. It was a difficult conversation, but it needed to be had. My brother and I developed a strained connection over time. When my brother got engaged to Kate, he invited me and Daisy to an engagement party with the rest of the family. I wasn't looking forward to seeing Kate again, but for my brother's sake, I decided to set my sentiments aside for one night. Little did I know, that night would be a disaster that none of us would ever forget. Kate stared at me from the time we arrived. She approached me and offered me a lengthy, prolonged hug, which made me uneasy. I observed that she was drinking extensively all night. She was noisy, emotional, and obsessively focused on me and Daisy. She continued to flirt with me, stroking my arm needlessly and making improper remarks. It was awkward, to say the least. I did my best to avoid her without raising a disturbance, but my attempts to separate myself just made her angrier. Matt stood up to make a toast to commemorate their engagement. Kate pulled the microphone from his hand in the middle of his address, as the entire crowd watched. Kate began a rambling and disjointed confession. She told everyone present that she had been living a lie for years. She appeared inebriated, and her speech was slurred. She admitted in front of our entire family and friends that she had always been in love with me, not Matt. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to me. My brother's face became pale, his expression a mix of shock and sadness. I could feel my pulse pounding in my chest as the horror of what she was saying set in. Kate, unconcerned about the ruckus she was causing, resumed her inebriated confession. She explained that she had tolerated remaining with Matt all these years because it was the only way she could be close to me. Kate went on to express her jealousy of Daisy, claiming that she was the reason I had stopped spending time with her. Then, to everyone's amazement, she begged me to leave Daisy. She stated she wanted us to run away together and have a wonderful life as a couple. The desperate tone in her voice was frightening. The room was stuck in startled quiet, except for Kate's drunken tears. Fortunately, Kate's sister, who was also attending the party, stepped in. She hurriedly pulled Kate away from the microphone and attempted to settle the situation, but Kate was not finished yet. She continued to wail and scream as her sister took her out of the room, shouting things at me like, "You're the love of my life, and don't let her take you from me." I wasn't sure where to look or what to say. My brother stood there, absolutely crushed, as our family and friends watched, shocked and disbelieving. I was appalled and ashamed by what had occurred. The consequences of this occurrence were terrible. Matt was devastated by Kate's public confession and betrayal and ended their engagement immediately. He severed all links with her and refused to see her again after that night. While I completely supported his decision to terminate things with Kate, I didn't expect him to cut me off as well. Matt refused to speak with me after that, no matter how hard I tried. He ignored my calls and messages, and he did not respond even when our parents tried to interfere. He stopped attending family gatherings, barely communicated with anyone, and provided no updates on his life. He has had almost no communication with any of us in the past 5 years. He was even absent on the most important day of my life, my wedding to Daisy. My parents occasionally receive a few updates from him, but that's about it. We have no idea why he cut us off so totally, but we understand his need for space, even if it breaks our hearts. That is why, when my phone rang this week and I saw Matt's name on the screen, I was taken aback. I hadn't heard from him in years, and I couldn't believe he was reaching out now. When I answered the phone, the first few moments were awkward. We hadn't spoken in a long time, and it was hard to know where to begin. But I was just glad that my older brother had finally contacted me. I missed him more than I knew. Matt informed me he was doing okay and eventually revealed why he was reaching out. He informed me that he was getting married in a few months. The news surprised me, but I was truly thrilled for him. After everything he'd been through, it felt like a new beginning in his life. I congratulated him cordially and expressed how pleased I was to hear the news. Curious, I inquired whether he planned to invite our parents, Daisy, and me to the wedding. It had been a long time since we'd all been together, and I saw this as an ideal opportunity for reconciliation. Matt confirmed that he was actually inviting us, which reassured me. It seemed like a bridge was finally being repaired. But then he said something that really took me off guard. He simply stated that, while I had been asked to his wedding, I could not come empty-handed. At first, I chuckled, believing he was making a light-hearted joke about wedding presents. I promised him that I would get him and his fiancée a wonderful gift. But Matt quickly clarified that wasn't what he meant. He went on to claim that what he really wanted from me was $50,000. I froze, taken by surprise. $50,000 for a wedding gift? For a second, I suspected he was still joking, but the severity in his voice dispelled any doubt. I urged him to clarify, to see if I had misunderstood, but Matt insisted. He informed me that this was something I owed him after breaking his trust years before. He argued that paying him this money was the only way to mend our friendship. I pressed him further, confused and shocked, to attempt to figure out what he was saying. What trust had I broken? How had I harmed him? That's when Matt mentioned Kate. He described in great detail how his ex-fiancée proclaimed her love for me at their engagement party. He told me how ashamed and deceived he felt that night, standing in front of his family and friends while his life fell apart. Matt blamed me for his disgrace and emotional agony. He claimed that I should have known Kate's feelings all along and done anything to avoid her disclosure. He criticized me for not setting stricter limits with her and for failing to recognize the warning signs sooner. Matt told me that the day Kate professed her love to me, he experienced a significant emotional and social loss. He said that the incident harmed his reputation, broke his confidence, and left him emotionally wounded. In his mind, the $50,000 was more than just a wedding present. It was compensation for the agony and humiliation he felt I had caused him. He saw it as an opportunity for me to take responsibility and make things right. Obviously, I informed Matt that I couldn't do what he asked. I informed him that he was insane for ever suggesting something like this. But Matt persisted in giving me a few days to rethink, implying that if I did not pay him the money, our relationship would be gone forever. Honestly, this feels like an ultimatum, and it has left me angry and very saddened. My wife believes my brother has lost his mind, but some of my cousins agree with Matt. They believe I should at least consider compromise and compensating him, as he has suffered greatly as a result of my actions. Okay, Reddit, here's an update. Matt's demand has stunned my parents just as much as it has me. When I told them what he had said, they couldn't believe that after years of silence and no attempts to communicate, Matt had simply come out to demand $50,000 from me. They are upset on my behalf, especially given the emotional toll the issue with Kate took on me and Daisy. My folks are fully on my side. We are now preparing a proper sit-down with Matt to resolve these concerns once and for all. The idea is to figure out what's going on with him and grasp his motives. We want to know if this $50,000 demand is truly what he believes will resolve our differences, or if something deeper is fueling his hatred. I'm also hoping that this discussion will allow Matt to see things from my perspective. I want him to understand that I was never the cause of what happened between him and Kate, and that blaming me is not the answer to his sorrow. To everyone who is wondering if I flirted with Kate or somehow led her on, let me be very clear. I was never drawn to her from the start. I respected her because she was important to Matt. Any feelings she had for me were totally her own. I never gave her any cause to believe I had anything more than platonic respect for her. Kate repeatedly crossed boundaries, despite my attempts to remove myself. She drove away several ex-girlfriends of mine by lying, bullying, and being bossy. She became envious and hateful when Daisy entered my life, and she made it her purpose to mistreat her whenever possible. Matt wasn't immune to her actions either. He noticed how uncomfortable she made me and how antagonistic she was to Daisy and my ex-partners, but he never discussed it with Kate. He didn't confront her or try to improve the situation. That stings also because I believe he knew deep down that what she was doing was wrong, but he decided to look the other way rather than confront her. It's as if he expected me to simply tolerate her antics for the sake of peace, no matter how much stress they imposed on me. Also, what kind of grown woman gets drunk and professes her emotions for her fiancé's brother at their engagement party? That moment was both mortifying and awful. She showed no respect for her relationship with Matt, for me, or for Daisy. I'm pleased Matt and Kate are no longer together because I believe this inappropriate dynamic would have persisted indefinitely. Update 2. It has been a month since my last update. Last week, after much back and forth, my parents, Daisy, and I finally met with Matt. He had made numerous reasons not to meet us, dragging his feet and avoiding any meaningful talk. My parents, however, remained strong. They insisted that we clear the air and strive to reconstruct what was destroyed. Initially, the meeting was difficult. Matt was defensive, and he began by admitting that he had been nursing a grudge against me all along. He stated that Kate's behavior caught him off guard, which contributed to his estrangement from me. He also began accusing me of having an affair with Kate on the side, implying that there might be more to the story than I or Kate had revealed. The charge stunned me, and I told him unequivocally that I would never do anything like that to him. I had always respected the bounds of his relationship with Kate, even when she was acting inappropriately. I wasn't about to let him accuse me of anything so ridiculous without a fight. Daisy also spoke out for me. She explained to Matt that Kate's activities had harmed the entire family, not just him, and that we had all been touched by her behavior. She reminded Matt of all the times he had picked Kate over me, despite her toxic behavior, and told him that he should have seen this coming much sooner than I did. Daisy told him bluntly that what he was doing to me was emotional manipulation, and that he shouldn't punish me for what had happened when I, too, was a victim like him. He needed to move on from his past. Daisy's powerful, clear voice drew Matt in and made him listen. I also informed Matt how many times I'd tried to contact him over the years. I emphasized that I could have discussed these issues with him years ago. I didn't shut him out. He cut us off without explanation. This is when Matt informed me that he was too humiliated to face me back then, that everything had been so overwhelming for him, and that he believed cutting us off was the best move for his mental health. While I understood his desire for space at the time, I couldn't figure out why, after all these years, he was asking me for money. That's when Matt revealed the true reason. He stated that the $50,000 he was requesting represented the amount of money he had spent on Kate over the years, including trips, presents, and any other costs incurred throughout their relationship. He believed that because Kate fell in love with me and I was the reason their relationship ended, I owed him the money as reparation. It was as if he was attempting to rationalize the absurdity of the situation by presenting it as a debt I needed to repay. I sat there in full shock as Matt continued to rationalize his ludicrous request. I told Matt straight up that he was only looking for ways to vent his rage on me. His focus should have been on Kate, the person who made those decisions and caused all of the anguish, not on me. If he wanted recompense, he should have asked her to pay rather than me. I was not the one who behaved inappropriately. I was not the one who lied or crossed boundaries. Kate was the one who made the issue, but I was getting blamed for it. Matt seemed to be grabbing at straws, blaming everyone save the person who had genuinely mistreated him. My mother was also unable to keep back. She informed Matt that asking me for money was extremely inappropriate and that he should stop acting like a crazy person. My father agreed with her. My brother turned on my parents and began accusing them of always favoring me. "You both should stay out of this matter. You always support him no matter what," he cried. "Kate left me for him, and you two are taking his side. He's clearly the golden child. You both always favor him no matter what." My parents, taken by surprise by his behavior, attempted to calm him down. My father spoke first, his voice firm despite the tension in the room. "Matt, that's not true. We've always loved you both the same, and we've always supported you through everything. We've never picked sides, and we never will. It's simply that asking your brother for money would not make things better between you two, especially when he hasn't done anything to you." Matt's face twisted with rage, and he shot back at me. "I blame you for Kate leaving me, and I will continue to do so. If I don't pay him, he has nothing else to say to me." He also informed my parents that because they had chosen my side, he was done with them. "I'll never speak to any of you again. I will not let any of you meet my wife or future children. You're all dead to me starting today." He stormed out of the room, leaving us all stunned in silence. My parents tried to call after him, but it was futile. Matt hasn't contacted us since, and I've been attempting to reach him, but he appears to have blocked me. Update 3. It's been 4 months since Matt stopped talking to us, and I've stopped trying to reach out to him. It was difficult at first, and I kept wondering if I could have said something differently, if there was anything else I could have done to save our relationship, but after all this time, I've accepted that I can't change what happened, and I can't force someone to talk to me if they're not ready. My parents miss Matt, of course, and love him, but they've accepted Matt's decision. If he ever wishes to contact them, they'll be there, but for now, they've stopped pushing it. I've gotten a few DMs from people asking if Matt was trying to get me to pay him money for his wedding expenses, rather than it being about Kate. To be honest, I'm not sure what Matt's true intentions were. If it was genuinely about him needing financial help for his wedding or some other situation, I might have been more willing to discuss it and see if there was a way to help, but that wasn't the case. He made it clear that it was about me somehow. That is something I just can't wrap my head around. At the end of the day, the money wasn't the issue. It was Matt's misplaced anger and complete lack of understanding about what actually happened. I don't think Matt was thinking clearly, and I've accepted that I can't change his mind. Daisy and I are doing well, and I am grateful every day to have such a strong woman by my side. She is now pregnant, and we are excited to become parents soon.